Episode 3 of Interview with Warfighters. If you guys have never seen any of the Interview with Warfighters videos that I've done so far, this is where I bring in your regular average grunt, 03 infantry, and give them an interview, all right? There's a lot of interviews and shows and stuff out there about the special operations warfighters out there, but there's, from my perspective anyways, it doesn't seem like there's a lot about the regular ground pounder. So I got one of those ground pounders out today. Very good friend of mine, guy that I've hooked and jabbed with, shed the same blood and the same mud, my good buddy Nathan Schoemer. So let's welcome him on tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, brother. So
try to make sure that the camera is nice and centered, looking good. Okay, excellent. All right, well, let's jump right into it.
All right, man. Well, first and foremost, this is only episode 3 of my this new show, Interview with Warfighters, and I want to get this out front and right off the bat, you have your own social media platform, whether that's YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is. I want to go ahead and mention that first so that people can go to your channel and everything else to subscribe, and they know that that's out there. So can you just talk a second about that and introduce that to everybody?
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate that. My main social media platform that I use is just like you. It's YouTube. So on YouTube, it's just my name, Nate Schoemer, and the entire channel is all about dog training. Except for some of the early episodes, I did a couple interviews, and I did an interview with Friedman, the one you did on episode 2. And that was a 3-hour interview. I know you guys did about 2 hours. But yeah, anyways, to answer the question, Nate Schoemer is the name of the channel, and it's all about dogs and dog training. So if anyone out there wants to learn how to train their dog, that's definitely a great resource. At least I like to think that it is.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, again, appreciate everybody coming on tonight. Nate Schoemer is Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, is a very good friend of mine and very close friend. And again, I'm just ecstatic having him out here. I'm very happy to get him on here and participate in these interviews with warfighters. So let's kick this off, man. We're going to go back to the beginning. So when was it that you decided you wanted to be a Marine, and then what exactly made you want to be an infantryman?
All right, great question. Good way to get started. Well, back in 2000, I started considering it. It was something that actually my brother decided to do before I did it. And I remember thinking he was a little crazy joining the Marine Corps. But then at the same time, I was thinking, if you're going to join one of the branches, why not join the best one? And I didn't even consider any of the other branches. I think they're all great. They're all exceptional. They all do what they're supposed to do. But I've just always known the Marine Corps to be the hardest, toughest, the real, as you say, ground pounders, the real war fighters. And I decided that would probably be a really great option for me moving forward. It would help instill some discipline. I was always getting in trouble as a kid, and I thought that would probably be a really good path, which I'm glad I did it. Of course, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life. And I ended up signing up in the summer of 2001 before 9/11 happened. And I did that a year prior to actually going to boot camp because that would help my brother get private first class when he went in. So he was able to sign me up as one of his referrals, and he left for boot camp shortly after that, which he got private first class. And here's an interesting story about that. When he was in boot camp, 9/11 happened. I remember exactly where I was. I was walking down the hallway close to the main office at my high school, and I was probably in trouble for something, so I had to go down to the office. And I remember one of the teachers walking up to one of the hall monitors and saying, "Did you hear that did you hear that one of the Twin Towers was just hit by a plane?" And at the time, I didn't even know what the Twin Towers were. So I kind of shrugged it off and just kept on with my business. And then, of course, they were bringing the students into classrooms. They were showing us footage of what's taking place. Obviously, it was a really, really big deal. My brother, when he was in boot camp, he thought that it was part of training. He didn't think it was an actual real event. He thought that the government made these fake videos as a part of a training test with the recruits going through recruit training. He didn't really realize that it was real until he started getting mail. And then also at that point, they started telling them, hey, we're probably going to be going to war. Get ready. And here's a funny story about that. So 9/11 happens. That day, I go to the recruiting office. I'd already been signed up, and I was going into the office every single day. My recruiter wanted me to. He said it would help me get prepared for boot camp and instill a little bit more discipline. So I get there, and he says, hey, since this attack just happened, they're allowing people who are signed up in the delayed entry program, even if you haven't completed high school, to go into the Marine Corps early. You'll finish your high school education while you're in boot camp and School of Infantry. I don't remember exactly what he said. And he's like, then we can get you on the ground sooner rather than later. And I was sitting there and I said, you know, do I have some time to think about this? Like, this is a big decision to make. And he says, we need to know. We need to know right now. You need to tell me right now. And so I paced for a few seconds and I looked at him. I said, let's do it. Let's do it. And he's like, all right. So he rushes over to the computer. He gets a bunch of papers. He brings over a stack of papers with another sheet at the very bottom. He says, all right, I need you to sign this. And I look at it and I said, well, I have to see what I'm signing. He's like, no, there's no time for that. Sign the paper. And so I pulled the pile of papers off of the bottom one that he wanted me to sign. And in big, bold print, it said, sign here if you're a complete jackass. So he didn't get me to sign it, but he did the joke to someone else as well, and they had quit their job. They quit their job because they thought they were going to leave for boot camp, and they show back up, and he's like, oh, no, it was a joke. I didn't actually mean for you to go quit your job. So he had to go back to his job and say, hey, I'm not leaving for boot camp for another 6 months or so. So, yeah, so then I was in the delayed entry program. Of course, working out, trying to get into good shape, trying to learn my general orders, some of the basic things that they tell you about in boot camp, watching Full Metal Jacket as many times as possible, you know, really just getting pumped up. And then, of course, once I graduated high school, 3 days after I graduated high school, I was in boot camp. And I remember being so stoked. I'm going to Marine Corps, Recruit Training Depot. I'm going to learn how to be a United States Marine. Like that was just saying that was a powerful feeling. It was like, this is incredible. It's being part of something bigger than ourselves. So I was really stoked. And I get there and it looks just like Full Metal Jacket. I'm like, man, it's like I'm in the movies. You got drill instructors, you got these racks, everything looks like the movie. And then Shitbag Schoemer started to come out. So Shitbag Schoemer, what happened, I was really excited in the beginning, and I was in what's known as the Booger Platoon. I was in the worst platoon in the company, and we just couldn't do anything right. We sucked at drill, we sucked at PT, we sucked at everything, and it was really discouraging. And that kind of got me bummed out, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. I need to get out of here. I was not happy, and I was upset about the decision that I made, and I was trying to get out, and thank God I didn't do anything dumb enough to get me kicked out. Because again, being in the Marine Corps, I'm sure same with you. Obviously, you're still doing it. Best decision of my life. So I didn't like it at first. I liked it at first. Then I started to not like it. Graduated boot camp. Then I went to the School of Infantry, and I wasn't excited at School of Infantry. I was like, what am I doing? I don't want to be a part of this. Again, really just being a giant shitbag. And I was listening to the one that you did with Friedman, where we get to figure out what our MOS is. And I remember you guys talking about mortarmen. When they started asking who or what we wanted to be, I actually wanted to be a mortarman, because I was like, mortarmen hang around, they play cards, they have a good time. That sounds like something I want to do. So I believe the order that I put down on the sheet was mortarman, then assaultman, then machine gunner, and then infantry. And I got machine gunner, and well, that's what I got. So that's what I have to do. When I was in School of Infantry, me and one of the other guys that we thought we had made the wrong choice, as I said, in life. And we went UA. So those of you that are not familiar with military terminology, a lot of people know it as AWOL, but UA is unauthorized absence. I told you about this before, right?
I don't think so, man. I didn't know you went UA and US. So
yeah, I went UA for 2 days. So I went UA and I was like, this is going to get me out. I'm going to come back and they're going to kick me out. We get back, and I remember one of the instructors was a corporal. And when me and the other guys show up, he starts yelling at us. First, of course, because we left. But second, they had just finished packing up all our stuff. They had just finished doing all the inventory, all that stuff you have to do if you're dropping somebody or somebody goes UA. And he's like, if you just showed up 2 hours prior, I wouldn't have had to done all that extra work. So they weren't happy about it. Of course, we were drug tested when we came back, and we were both NJP'd. So that was my NJP. I believe Chesty Puller, or who was it that said every good Marine has at least one NJP?
That was Chesty. Friedman had 5, by the way. Friedman had 5.
and that came back to haunt me, of course, down the line in my Marine Corps career. Graduate School of Infantry. I know I'm just kind of running on with this. I didn't even answer your question. But as far as wanting to join the Marine Corps, when I decided I wanted to join, I wanted to do the best one. And I just thought the Marine Corps was the best. I still believe it's the best. And I went down to the Marine Corps recruiting office, signed up. Originally, I signed up as artillery. And I signed up as artillery because that was my recruiter. He was artillery. And he was like, you'll love it. You get to travel. It's an amazing job. And so he convinced me. Well, he left and he was replaced by a new sergeant that was a grunt. And he convinced me to switch to be infantry. And I'm glad he did, because I loved my experiences in Marine Corps infantry. So do you want me to just keep going with the story, or did you have another question you want to ask that I can jump off of, or just keep rolling?
Just let me interject real quick, because I find this funny about what you just said about your recruiter and stuff, because it's crazy how, like, I swear to God, like I absolutely believe in divine intervention, right? Because there's just too many coincidences that happen. So I was kind of the same way. Like I had a recruiter, and he was like, "Hey, we're gonna submit you for security forces. You know, you're still gonna be an infantryman, but you know it's gonna be an awesome gig. You can go overseas and be an embassy guard and all this other stuff." And you're like, they're like, they only take the best infantrymen for this. So you know, they propped it up like it was like this special assignment. And I was like, oh, you know, that sounds really cool. And I was kind of excited for that. And then like last minute before I shipped, it was like, yeah, that's no longer available, man. You're just going to be straight infantry. So, but if that would have never happened, you know, if I would have went to security forces, like I wouldn't have gone to Bravo 1-4.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my whole life path would have been completely altered.
Completely different. Yeah. That makes me wonder what would have happened had I stuck with artillery. You know, of course, I'm sure I mean, who knows? Maybe by going down that myself, I don't know if I want to risk it a third time. You know, third time's a charm. And then Friedman, he did what, 5, I think?
He did 5. And I don't know if you saw, I don't know how far you got in the interview, but he has a picture, and like all but 2 of these guys in this platoon photo were either WIA or KIA.
Jeez. Yeah, that's intense. I mean, the most intense situation that I was in was Najaf Cemetery, and
we'll get to that. Don't jump too far.
All right. So sorry, go ahead.
All right, so you go to SOI. You put 0311 as your last, rifleman as your last option, and you get your second to last.
Second to last. Yep.
Yeah, second to last option. So tell me.
I don't know how they ended up picking me. I mean, you guys were talking about that as well. Maybe I shouldn't have listened to the episode, because there's certain things that are on my mind. But yeah, when we were in, or when we got in rather, it seemed like they just picked the biggest guys to be the machine gunners. And I remember thinking, like, I'm the smallest dude in the machine gun section. Like, what's going on here? Although we did have Mongo.
Yeah, Mongo.
Yeah, he was like the shortest, but that dude was so strong. That guy had like freak strength. So yeah, School of Infantry, I finish up. I got my NJP. I got my private first class, 1 stripe up, nothing underneath. And I get to my unit. And I remember being really intimidated when I first got to my unit. The first day there, I think it was within a week of being there, or even a couple days after being there, we were supposed to go on this really long hike, and it was raining outside, and the hike was canceled. And I remember thinking, thank goodness, I'm so glad the hike was canceled, because I hated hikes in boot camp. In boot camp, those hikes really kicked my ass when I first did them. And it's definitely something that over time, either you get used to it, or your body just doesn't feel the pain and discomfort from it the more you do it. Because even later on in my career, I would do hikes with more weight than the recruits would, and I'd be running back and forth doing laps, and I would feel fine, no issues at all. But in boot camp, I remember it just killing me. Maybe it was because I was just in a bad mental state going through boot camp, you know. And I believe they've done studies too. recruits in boot camp have a significant higher level of estrogen than someone not in boot camp, because you're at that low position. You have to always say yes or no, sir, this recruit, and it takes away some of the testosterone. I haven't done the studies personally, but I believe I read an article or I saw something about that, and maybe that made me weaker. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with excuses for how pathetic I was in boot camp. But of course, we learn and we grow. So I remember my sergeant, Sergeant Wurges at the time, when I first showed up, he was asking me different questions about being a machine gunner, and I knew nothing because I did not pay attention in School of Infantry. I thought I was going to be getting out. And he's asking me these questions, and I don't know him. And I remember he asked me one question, and I didn't know the answer, and he started to laugh. So I started to laugh. And he says, I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I'm laughing because I'm trying not to hurt you. And I was like, oh, this is not good. And so, of course, shortly after getting to the fleet, we get orders that we're going to be going to Iraq. We get I believe we had 1 month break, right, before we had to deploy.
I think we had one month in the fleet before we mobilized to deploy. But I want to tell one story though.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
You just were a character, man. Like you were a unique individual. You were a unique Marine, and you and I were put in a barracks room together, and our barracks at the time had a Jack and Jill, like it connected with another barracks room.
Right.
Well, the barracks room that our rooms connected with were our senior Marines. There was a sergeant in there. There was like a corporal in there.
Yep.
And I remember one night, Nate walks into the next room. You guys just got to understand, when you're a boot, i.e. you're brand new Marine to the fleet, infantry, right? Yeah, you were the bottom of the totem pole, man. You were low life. Well, Nate walks into the next room with these NCOs, and he's like, hey, somebody got a cigarette? You tell that story, man.
I don't even remember the full detail of this story. I remember somehow we started grappling with them.
It was Sergeant Ski in there.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how it went. Man, these stories, like, they're so long ago now that I'm starting to lose some of the details. I wish I kept a journal. Okay. That would be a piece of advice for anyone getting into the military now. Keep a journal. You're going to want to look back at those stories, and reading them will probably trigger those memories. I remember grappling them.
Yes.
Or it was something like, yeah, I asked him for a cigarette, and then I don't remember. He asked me if I would, like, what I would do for a cigarette, and I was like, I'll grapple you or something. I don't remember.
No, so I had it backwards. They came into the bathroom and asked us for a cigarette or something, and you had one, and the sergeant was like, Sergeant Ski is like, well, what do you want for it? And he's like, and you were like, well, I was thinking like push-ups or something. You said this to a sergeant as a boot. And then at that point, they proceeded to beat your ass.
That's right. Yeah, I do remember that. Oh, man, I miss those barracks fights. I mean, they were always good fun, too. They were never, like, serious. And that actually reminds me, the corporal who was in that room, the first night that I got there, he knocked on the door. And I really respected him for this, because it wasn't something that was a normal character trait of senior Marines at the time. So he knocks on the door, and I open it. And he says, hey, man, you just got to the fleet? I said, yes. He goes, well, I got something for you. 1 beer's good. 2's better. 3 will give you a buzz. Welcome to the fleet, brother. And I was like, man, that is awesome. And I bullshitted with him for a while. And I think a lot of senior Marines at the time may have thought that if you were nice, then it would come off as weakness. But for me, it actually made me respect him more. I wanted, like, when we were out training and we're out in the field and we're doing different things, if he asked me to do something, I wanted to, because I was like, man, this guy welcomed me into the unit. And that's important. I mean, when you're with the unit, you guys are going out together. You're going out into the fight together. When the shit hits the fan, I mean, at that moment in time, yeah, rank matters because of leadership and what we have to do and who's directing what, but we all have to have each other's back. And we all have to want to have each other's back. And yeah, I thought that was a really, really cool story. There was a few other, I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the other incidences we ran into before heading out to Iraq. Are there any other ones that you could think of? I know you and I were constantly getting in trouble because of me. So I was always getting in trouble. And since you were my roommate, I guess you could say, every time I would mess something up, they would make you pay for it as well. I believe one day I showed up and I didn't shave. And so our squad leader at the time made me carry around a razor. And every 30 minutes, you had to shave my face for me. And I had to stand there like I was a recruit again, getting my face shaved. I remember we would joke about it too. I was actually talking to Rachel about this earlier. I was telling her that we would get in trouble, and you and I started joking around about it. We're like, man, we are going to be the best dishwashers ever. We are going to be so good at cleaning. If they still skin potatoes, we are going to be the best at skinning potatoes. We're just going to rock this. And, you know, for you being such an exceptional Marine from the beginning, I mean, I used to tell my recruits about you. So I hope if some of them see this, they can finally put a face to the stories. But all good stories, all war stories, war fighting stories, getting them pumped up for, you know, like final drill and things like that. And from the beginning, you were like this, always been an exceptional Marine. And here I was, shitbag Schoemer, and you had to deal with me. How was that? Was that a pain in the ass?
It was a pain in the ass, man. But it was good. It was all fun. Like you said, man, I remember we were just so just to kind of preface this, like back then, it might still be like this to a degree, but most of our senior Marines were Lance Corporals. There were very few NCOs. And so literally our squad leader was a Lance Corporal. And when I say senior Lance Corporal, that means they went on like one deployment, right? Mm-hmm. And they acted and believed that they were God, and they treated us like absolute shit. And so we just got to the point, you just hit a low point where it's like, yeah, okay, we'll play this game. We'll just do, like you said, we'll do everything as best of our ability, man. And
yeah, that makes me think of a story when you and I had picked up Corporal and we came back from our first deployment. I had to go down to the first sergeant's office. I don't remember what for. I think it might have been I was on duty the night before, so I was giving him the duty login book with all the information and going over what happened the night before. And I said something to him, Sergeant Major Morales now, but at the time he was First Sergeant Morales. I said, it was something about one of the other Marines disrespecting one of the senior Lance Corporals, one of our senior Lance Corporals. You and I were Corporals, but a lot of our peers at the time were senior Lance Corporals, just like what we had when we came in. And I said, oh yeah, he was being disrespectful to a senior Lance Corporal. And Sergeant Major Morales looks at me and goes, Senior Lance Corporal? He goes, you're not a senior until you have a rocker. And I was like, oh, okay, very well. Well, then he was disrespecting a Lance Corporal.
Yeah.
And you could be a Lance Corporal too. And there's still, that blew my mind at first when I got there. I'm like, he's a Lance Corporal, but because you've been here a little longer, you're a senior Lance Corporal, and he has to run around and bow to you as though you're, you know, a sergeant major or something. Some of the guys had power highs. You know, as we get older, I look back on some of the training or some of the things that we've gone through, even some of the things that I may have done as I moved up into a leadership position, some of the mistakes that I may have made, which of course we all make mistakes, but a lot of it just is immaturity. You know, it's like there's these young guys with this significant amount of power and they just end up abusing it quite often. And we saw that quite a bit. Now, we did have some really good senior Marines as well, though, but some of the senior Lance Corporals, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, I'll remind you, just to kind of piggyback on what you just said, when we first got to Bravo 1-4, one of the senior Marines was a PFC, Andrews. Yeah. He had gotten hemmed up, gotten in trouble for some stuff, and they busted him down at PFC, and he was one of our senior Marines, and we had to stand at parade rest, even though we end up becoming Lance Corporals. We'd have to stand at parade rest for him because he was a senior Marine. That's just how it worked.
He ended up picking up really fast, though. I remember when he came back, he picked up real fast.
Yeah.
So get to the fleet. Were there a couple other stories during that time that you want to talk about? I can't, man. Like I said, I really wish I kept a diary so I could look back on these things. In fact, it makes me think of. So I think last time I was on your channel, I may have mentioned the Revolutionary War. I'm not quite sure, but I'm just absolutely fascinated by the Revolutionary War. I've read a handful of books on it, watched all the videos on it, watched the documentaries on it, been to the Revolutionary Museum, saw George Washington's tent. I mean, I'm just absolutely fascinated by it. And last time I was in Philadelphia, where they have the Revolutionary War Museum, I saw a book called Private Yankee Doodle. And I opened it up, I started looking at it, and it's about a private during the Revolutionary War and the experiences he had. Of course, anytime you learn about something, especially something as far back as the Revolutionary War, and of course, all the wars after that, the War of 1812, the Mexican War, the Civil War, right? It's always the big picture. They tell the story of the big picture. You hear about what the generals did, what sort of movements they had, what battles they won, what battles they lost. And this one book, what was interesting, I asked the woman who worked there, I said, is this book any good? Have you read it? And she said, no, I haven't read it, but one of my coworkers started reading it and she just couldn't get into it and really didn't care for the book very much. And I said, well, in my head, I'm thinking, it's probably because you just don't have any military experience, so you can't relate to it. And so I got the book anyways and started reading it, and it's fascinating. So this guy had to have kept a journal because he ended up writing it, I believe, 30 years after the Revolutionary War. And the stories in there, to me, were just so fascinating because it's things that I could imagine us doing if we were in that same situation, if we were, during that time, because of course they didn't have MREs back then. So how would they get food? And he talks about it. I think in one story, they were sitting on a bench and like this cat was underneath the bench and it had really, really unstable wood. And it was just, a couple beams and this board, and they're sitting on it and it broke and fell on the cat and killed the cat. And then I believe, I may be misspeaking, but I believe they ended up eating the cat. Because they're like, well, that's meat, so we might as well consume it. But the stories are just so fascinating because it's from the perspective of the private. And right. He was there from the beginning to the end. I mean, he was in the entire time. He re-enlisted. So it's definitely a book worth reading. But again, for those that are either just now getting in or if they've been in for a little while, start a journal because it's going to be something you'll probably want to even write about later. I mean, I've been considering, since I wrote my dog training manual, I've been considering writing a book about my experiences in the Marine Corps. But then I'm also thinking, like, how many details have I forgotten? And when I tell the story, how much of it is going to be information that I may be starting to mix up? Because, I mean, the first time we went to Iraq, that was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, well, I remember being on.
Let's refresh some of that memory.
That's what?
Let's refresh some of that memory tonight.
Yeah, let's do it for sure.
All right. So you get on the ship, the USS Dubuque. What was that like?
Oh, good times. I think the USS Dubuque didn't have the tables in the cafeteria bolted down, right? That was the one that didn't have it bolted down. I remember one time we were hitting some rocky waves, some stormy weather, and all the tables are just sliding back and forth. At first, I thought it was going to be miserable, but I actually ended up liking some of the experiences on ship because we didn't have to do as much training, even though we went into the reversed schedule where we were training at night and then sleeping during the day. I do remember our berthing being incredibly hot. And since we were the privates, we were the private first classes, we were the boots, we never really got to sit at the table in the berthing. All the senior lance corporals and NCOs would sit there. And one time I remember we ended up having to do we had to do like a show, didn't we? All the junior Marines had to put on some sort of performance. And then I think we did Fight Club, right?
Yeah.
And then, and we would grapple on ship. That was always a good time. I remember one of the senior Marines tried putting me in a chokehold. What happened? Are you still there?
Yeah, I just put up a picture of you.
Okay.
So this is actually from OIF too, the second time you're on a ship. But I put this picture up so people could see what the racks look like and just like the close confined area that we lived in.
Yeah, we had a really small berthing. It definitely wasn't as comfortable as the sailors' berthings that they would have. I remember going to the Navy's berthings and looking at it and being like, man, I wish our space was as nice as this. Man, I look so young in that photo. We're getting old. You got gray hair, all that good stuff. Can't tell if you have gray hair though, because you have the lighter hair and you still clean shaven. But yeah, I remember. I don't remember who it was, but somebody put me in a chokehold, and I acted like I passed out. Like they put me in the chokehold, and I was just like. So they let go of me, and I remember I was shaking on the floor, and in my head, I'm thinking, I hope they buy this. because I don't want them to actually choke me out. And then I remember Lance Corporal Carter trying to call bullshit on it. He's like, he's faking. That dude is faking. That's not real. And I was like, no, totally real. Lights were out. But yeah, I mean, I remember watching movies on ship. I do remember we were watching, I believe it was Total Recall. Total Recall. And somebody said something about Arnold's arms. They're like, hey, Downing, are you looking at Arnold's arms? And you go, the sausage! I remember you and we were the big gym rats. We were constantly hitting the gym, trying to get big and swole. And you were the one who pretty much introduced me to protein powder. I remember I think your parents were sending you protein powder. And I remember seeing that. I'm like, what is that? What do you got going on over there? Because I really knew nothing about working out or taking supplements or anything like that. And you're like, oh, it's my extra fuel. I don't remember what you said, but I think we were in Iraq at that point. And that was when I first started taking protein. I know this is kind of going into the weeds, a different direction of the story. But man, protein has evolved.
Yeah, yeah.
I had strawberry, and I used to have to plug my nose in order to drink it. It was terrible. Now protein shakes are delicious. I mean, I'll drink them as a treat. Here's an interesting story about being on ship. Well, it's more about getting off of ship. When we made it to Kuwait, I remember something happened where the AC wasn't working on the ship, and it was incredibly hot. Everyone was burning up, so everybody ended up sleeping on the flight deck. You remember that?
Yeah, that was going through the Strait of Hormuz, I think.
Why am I squatting there? What was I like? I'm not as good. I'm gonna squat. What was going on there?
I don't know.
I always wonder about that. I'm like, why am I squatting?
But that was on the flight deck before we flew into Kuwait.
Yeah, and the day that we landed in Kuwait, the day we went from ship to Kuwait was February 27, 2003. You know how I remember that date?
How's that?
That was my birthday.
Oh, is that right?
I remember Friedman mentioning something about turning 18 in boot camp, I think, and then turning 19 in Iraq. And I was like, oh, yeah, I turned 19 going into Kuwait. And I remember when we landed in Kuwait, there was an advanced unit that was already out there. That's what Lopez and some of the other guys were already there. And I remember thinking, they've been out here for what, a month already? Ah, there we go. I'm standing there.
Yeah, there you go. You're gonna stand it up.
Look at you though. You look like G.I. Joe, like ready to kick down doors. Oh, here's an interesting story. I'm sure you remember this. This was when we were training, getting ready to go to Iraq. So the training had become very intense at this point. We were doing company-wide drills, and you and I are on the gun. You were the gunner. I was the ammo man. And you're sending rounds down range. And I remember you looked at me and you said, I can't wait till this is real. And then I remember the first time we made contact, it was contact left. The back door of the Amtrak opens up. We hear gunfire. We go running out. You are so pumped. We get down in position. We start laying rounds down range. And I remember as you're sitting there, you look over at me and you're like you were so stoked. You're like, this is what we train for.
Well, let's back up just a little bit. All right. So we're in Kuwait for, I don't know, a couple months, however long it was.
I think it was a month.
It was just a month. So what were your thoughts, man? Because I remember, I don't know how vividly you remember this, but I remember like the night before the invasion kicked off, like we're mop, level 3 and stuff. We're all gathered around a big school circle around the commanding officer. And he's giving us like a speech, like this speech, like a movie grade speech. And it's like, hey, we're going in, guys. This is what we've trained for, the whole 9 yards. Do you remember that?
I do. I actually do remember quite a bit of Kuwait because there wasn't that much that was going on. Yeah. For the month that we were there, we were standing post. We were going to chow. We were cleaning weapons. I was getting in trouble constantly. That was when I had to run the sea bags.
Oh, can you tell that story again? That was funny.
Yeah, I don't remember what I say again.
This is before the invasion kicks off.
Yeah, before the invasion, when we're in Kuwait, I did something stupid, and I got in trouble. And so the senior lance corporal told me that I needed to pick up the sea bag, each sea bag, run it around the platoon, holding it above my head, and then stacking them in alphabetical order while singing the ABCs. So I'm running around A, B, C, D as I'm going around the platoon, stacking it. And I remember one of the sergeants said, "Is there anything that Lance Corporal Carter can do that'll fix you?" And I said, "No, Sergeant." But I meant yes, like, yeah, I'll be fit. It just came out wrong. And so they just assumed that was me being a smart ass. And I remember at that point, I was running around with one of the sea bags, and Lance Corporal Carter's walking towards me. And in my head, I'm like, he looks pissed. Something's about to happen. And as I'm running, I get choke slammed, takes me outside of the tent. And I remember he has me in a headlock, and I'm in parade rest in a headlock. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm about to get punched in the face while I'm at parade rest. This is going to be great. And so I didn't get punched in the face. So that was good. But then basically he says, "You realize we're getting ready to go into war and you're still effing off. You need to, basically, I need to get my shit together." And so whatever, that was pretty much the end of that punishment. But that does make me think of a story about Motivated Lopez, which the funny thing with Lopez, so he was a machine gunner with us. And at first, him and I did not get along, as I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, I do
But
remember.
then we ended up becoming best friends. Like all three of us were best friends. And he woke me up one night to go on fire watch. And he wakes me up and I ask him what time it is. And he says, "Don't worry about it. Get up. It's your time to be on fire watch." And I said, "Well, if you're waking me up 15 minutes prior, I could take my time. If you woke me up 3 minutes prior, then I'll speed it up." And he goes, "Just speed it up and get ready." And then I don't remember, I said something. We started talking shit. And then we end up outside of the tent. And he said something to me and started walking away. And I remember I said, kind of like, the little dog that barks at something as they walk away. And then when they turn back around, they're like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were going to turn back around." So he starts walking away. And I remember saying, if we were civilians, I'd be whooping your ass right now. And he turns around, and he comes back at me. He's like, "Well, start whooping my ass. I won't tell anyone." And luckily we didn't get in a fight, because I don't know how that would have ended up making our friendship. But of course we ended up becoming really great friends. And when we were in Kuwait, I kept thinking that there's a really huge possibility that we're not even going to end up going into Iraq. We're going to be in Kuwait for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. All this is going to be called off and we're going to head home. And I believe it was a few nights before we ended up getting the word in the speech that you talked about. We had a few of those speeches that I felt like they just finished watching Pearl Harbor, and they're like, "Look to the left, look to the right. One of those guys aren't going to be coming back with you." It's like, I felt like they all wanted to give that motivational, inspirational speech before we go into combat. How many people have that opportunity, being part of history? So I'm sure it was something exciting for them as well, because I remember at least 4 or 5 of those speeches, at least. And I don't think it was a drill. They called gas, right? Everybody wakes up at night and everybody's putting on their gas masks. And guess what shitbag Schoemer is doing? Looking for his gas mask. I remember I'm looking everywhere, and all I see is the entire platoon looking at me with gas masks on. And in my head, I'm like, are they just waiting for me to collapse? Just to see if I go down? Oh my gosh, talk about feeling like a shitbag in that moment. Luckily I found it, put it on, we were fine. But the night before, I was on post with with Luna Torres. And I remember talking to him. He's like, "Yeah, we're not going to Iraq." But then sure enough, the next day we get the word, "Get ready. We're going to be crossing the line of departure going into Iraq." And before we did, being out in the desert, and I remember looking off, and there was lights glowing in the distance over the horizon at night. You remember those lights? Mm-hmm. And the chaplain was doing prayers with everybody, getting ready to move in. And I thought we were going to load up in these Amtraks and we were going to drive right into the fight. But we didn't end up making contact, I think, for at least a week or so, right?
It was a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, because people were joking, saying, "Oh, no war 1-4. We're not going to see any combat." And we thought, yeah, we're going to end up pushing in. We're not going to see any combat. And you really don't think it's going to happen until it happens. Wasn't there, I can't recall who it was, but someone gave us a speech before going in. And he said, "Don't worry, though, because you're not going in alone. You have these guys to support you." And he raised his arms and fighter jets came.
Friedman and I were talking about that. I thought it was Mattis. Friedman thought it was somebody else, but it could have been Mattis, but we weren't sure. But like, yeah, every time I tell this story, man, I feel like nobody believes this. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was, but yeah, it was incredible. And I would tell people that story. I'm like, it was straight, like, that's the power of a general, man. Like, could you imagine giving a speech and be like, don't worry, guys, you got these guys backing you up, and 6 fighter jets come cruising overhead, or 5 or whatever it was. Yeah, that was incredible. That was probably the most motivational speech I've ever heard because of that. And I think he not only the fighter jets, but he also had helicopters go by too, right?
Yeah, Cobras.
And he's like, and you got these guys, and the helicopters come flying over. Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, if I read a book, I have to put that in there.
All right, so invasion kicks off. We cross the LOD into Iraq, and then just talk about the push, man. The living conditions, what it was like, what you were feeling. I mean, there's a lot to be said about just the push itself.
Yeah, the push was pretty miserable. Yeah, there I am. I thought I was cool with a cigarette in my mouth. I was like, this is going to be a cool photo for future generations. Looks like something out of Vietnam, but just with desert. But yeah, we basically lived in the Amtrak. I think we had 22 Marines in our Amtrak at a time.
Down with ammo.
Yeah, and I remember you would just end up having, I don't say you as you, I mean just anyone in general, you'd end up having like little hissy fits. I remember sitting there and I got somebody's leg hitting me in the head. I have an AT-4 rocket hitting me. I got ammo cans up against my leg. I have to use the restroom, but I can't. I'm on fire watch 24/7. Or what did we call it? Air watch, right?
Air watch, yeah.
Air watch. And so air watch is sitting on top of the Amtrak, making sure we don't make contact, and if we do, properly engaging. But being on, you and I, we were on air watch almost 100% of the time. I feel like we were constantly on air watch and pushing in. I remember the nights that we would stay in the Amtrak, I would be super stoked because I would think to myself, okay, I can sleep. We're going to drive all night. I don't have to dig a fighting hole. I don't have to rotate fire watch. And the first few nights when we were still in Kuwait, or we may have already been in Iraq at this point, I don't remember. It was still very, very flat desert at this point. So we have not pushed far enough into where there was any sort of mountain town type or towns or cities or anything like that. It was just flat desert, and it was freezing. I had no idea how cold the desert was until I was in the desert. And when we were out there, I think I woke you up a few times when I was on watch because I would sit there with my poncho on and I'd be moving my hands back and forth really fast to try to stay warm. And it would make the noise of the fabric rubbing together. And I think it woke you guys up a couple times and you're like, Schoemer, what the fuck, dude? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. And make sure when we get to the point in this deployment, make sure you tell the slippery rock story.
Oh, slippery rocks. Yeah. Yep. I do remember slippery rocks. That was definitely a story that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah. Don't jump ahead though. Wait till we get to it.
While we're pushing into the nights that we would stop, of course, we would have to dig a fighting hole. We'd have to get in position. We'd have to set up our, what's it called? It's been a while. Our gun card, I think it was called.
Range card.
Range card, where we'd have to have the information for the gun if somebody was to get on it. And so digging the fighting holes was always miserable. I mean, you and I, Lopez, a lot of the other guys, we would try to make the best of the situation. I remember we would race. We would try to see how fast we could dig the fighting hole. And we had our e-tools, and you and I would rotate. I'd be going at it as fast as I could. I'd get tired, you'd jump in. Then you get tired, I'd jump in. And we're like, all right, we're going to dig this fighting hole. There was one time we dug the fighting hole, and then we had to move, right?
Yeah.
Or am I mixed? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah,
but
it was every time.
I mean, digging those fighting holes was just miserable. And then which after reading more about the Revolutionary War, we had it pretty good with our food in comparison to some of those guys. But for a while, we were only getting 1 MRE a day. And I believe it was because the supply line was ambushed. So they weren't able to get to us, and they had to start rationing the meals. And so we had 1 MRE a day. And I remember just being hungry 24/7. Guys were sitting on the Amtrak just enjoying their little bottle of Tabasco sauce. People were trading a pound cake for a cigarette because cigarettes were starting to run low. We stopped at one somewhere we stopped, and I don't know how I was able to do this and not get in trouble. I don't remember what we were doing, but I started digging through trash. I found trash piles that were left by units that had come through prior to us. And I'm digging through the trash and I found bags of, rice and beans and all these different things that most people don't enjoy eating in an MRE. But when you don't have any food, it's gold. And I found a stack about this big, and I remember running back with it, super excited. And then from that point forward, every time we would stop, all the Marines were digging through trash. And everybody's coming back like, oh, I got rice. I got a pack of rice.
I got to tell one story because it pertains to the food. Yeah, it got so bad. I mean, I can't explain. Like, that is the worst. And remember, we only got one canteen of water a day too.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
After a month of having to drink one canteen of water every hour on the hour, the war kicks off, and they're like, one canteen of water for the day and one MRE for the day after you're used to getting 3. Right? But I remember when we first got contact in Nasiriyah, man, and the ramp drops, we get out, we do our thing, and we get back on. I had left my MRE on the bench because you don't know when contact's going to happen when you're inside the track. I left it on the bench, man. When I came back, that sucker was gone, man. Somebody jacked it, and it was like crushing.
Oh, that's the worst feeling. I had something similar. We were in our fighting holes, and then they had everyone jump on the Amtrak, and we get on the Amtrak, and I realized I'd left my MRE in the fighting hole. I just jumped off.
I remember
and went
that,
running over to it, and the worst part was I couldn't even find it. And I ended up coming back and getting in trouble. It's like, well, that was great. Always getting in trouble, Again, shitbag Schoemer strikes. So pushing in, making contact the first time. I don't remember where we were, but at this point we were far enough into Iraq where there was a good amount of vegetation around us. And we stopped to dig in for the night. We dug our fighting holes. We get into position, and I snuck off. Or I didn't sneak off. I think I went back to the Amtrak to maybe get some ammo or something like that. And I got back to the Amtrak, and our Amtrackers were reserves. So they weren't as strict and as they didn't really haze. They didn't do some of the stuff that our senior Marines would do. They were more down to earth level. They were more like civilians because they were reserves, which awesome, because it was really nice being able to talk to them like a normal human being, even though they were corporals and sergeants. And so I knocked on the Amtrak door, they opened it, and 4 of the guys are sitting in there, and they have a heater going, and they're brewing some coffee. And they said, hey man, you want a cup of coffee? And I said, yeah, I want a cup of coffee. So I pulled out my canteen cup, and I had a packet of cocoa powder. So I'm going to mix this cocoa powder in with this coffee. I pour it in the cup. They pour me a cup of coffee. I stir it. And I remember sitting there and telling myself, I have to enjoy this because it's the only moment in time that I have to enjoy right now. Everything before it has been miserable. I'm sure everything after it's going to be miserable. So I have to enjoy it. And I remember sitting there, and shortly after having the cup of coffee, which it also tasted like shaving cream because we would use those to shave out of, and I didn't clean it well enough afterwards, but I didn't care. I had coffee with cocoa and shaving cream, and it was delicious. And then Lance Corporal Carter ended up catching me in there, yelling at me. And that was the position that we ended up getting attacked at night. I think I had just finished my post. I woke you up. And then once I woke you up, that's when we were attacked. And I think we had to stand to for the next 2 hours or something like that. And then we were able to go back into the rotation. But I remember when we were attacked, I wasn't worried about being attacked. I wasn't afraid. You start to become desensitized a little bit the longer you're there. Before going out there, I was terrified. I was so afraid of possibly getting killed, getting injured, losing a limb. These things were going through my mind. But after being there for a good amount of time, I didn't really think of those things. I more so thought about the misery that I was experiencing on a day-to-day basis, which, you're hungry, you're tired, you just feel miserable, you're in pain. And being in machine gunners, we carried a lot of weight with us because we had our ammo, we still had our magazines for our rifle, the machine gun, the T&E, the tripod. There was so much gear, so we were loaded down, uncomfortable, and miserable. And that's what was my main focus. So when we were attacked, I wasn't really worried. I was more pissed off that they were taking away sleep from us. In my head, I'm like, come on, you had to attack right before I was about to get some sleep. Absolutely miserable. Do you remember that night?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, terrible. What are some other good ones that you can remember?
So every time Saddam would launch a Scud, having to go Mach 4, they batten the hatches on the Amtracs. And, it's already packed in there. Like, we literally had to have guys on air watch in order to have everybody fit. So it's like they launched a Scud and everybody had to come in. It was like there was no room for everybody.
Right.
And we'd just be crammed in there like sardines until, we got all clear.
Right now, I can't recall too much of pushing in, but I do remember when we made it to the pistol factory. And
okay. Yeah, not yet. I do. I just remembered something. Do you remember the night? I think it was just outside of El Nazaria. It was super dark, really foggy. You could barely see in front of you.
Yes.
And we're sitting in our machine gun position, and Gunnery Sergeant Morales, who was the company gunnery sergeant at the time, just comes out. I mean, literally, you can't see anything, and we only have one pair of 7 Bravos for the 3 of us. And if you guys don't know what 7 Bravos are, they're the NVGs with the 2 binoculars that condense into one actual tube. And we had one for the 3 of us to share because we had like a thermal on our machine gun and stuff like that. But we're sitting in our machine gun position, and our company gunnery sergeant runs up, and he's got like 2 armfuls of ammo cans, 7.62 ammo cans. He just drops them in our fighting position. He's like, "We're gonna get hit with it by an enemy division tonight. Don't leave your hole. Kill anything in front of you." And then he runs off into the fog, and that was it. We couldn't even see the next fighting position to our right or left. So,
dude, that guy was probably him and
Collins,
Sergeant Major Collins.
Yeah,
like those two. You talk about some superb, exceptional Marines. Some of the best Marines I ever had the honor to learn from and basically be under their command and their leadership. Incredible Marines. I remember him doing that. I'm like, man, this feels straight out of a movie. Before that happened, I do remember the fog starting to come in, and we ended up getting, I believe that night we had a second MRE. They gave us a second MRE. I might be mixing up nights. I'm not 100% sure, but they came around and someone said something like, "How you guys doing?" And someone responded with, "Could always be worse." And sure enough, it became way worse. As you said, it was pitch black. When I tell people this, I feel like they don't believe me or they think I'm exaggerating. There was no moonlight. There was nothing. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face like this. I couldn't see it. I remember everything was pitch black. After he came by, he said that, he takes off. He also told us to go get some more ammo. So we go back to the Amtrak. I can't even find the Amtrak. When we get to it, we're setting up the ammunition. I remember the red light was on inside of the Amtrak, so we could barely see. It starts raining on us. So now we have rain coming down. We get back to the position, and everybody's awake at this point because we think that there's a possibility that we're going to be attacked anytime soon. Or it's going to happen here in the near future. And then it didn't happen. I think we started rotating 50-50, right? 50 on, 50 off.
Well, what happened is Cat and tanks demolished them coming up the road. So they never even got to it. The enemy dismounts never even got to us because they just were taken out by tows and tanks. So.
Oh, and this does make me think of a couple stories. One that happened before. So it's going to bring us back to this story. When we were doing 50-50, or I think, we had 3 guys in a fighting hole. So we're rotating throughout the night. And our company XO was going around, and he was trying to see how people were, if the Marines were vigilant, if they were ready for an attack or an ambush. And he gets to our position, and he's like, runner attack. Yeah. Let's go. And we all jump up and we get in position, and we're in I don't even think we had boots on at the time, right?
No, I was on the gun, and you and Lopez were in the sleeping bags, and your boots were sitting next to it was obvious that you guys had stripped down because that's what you do back in the rear with training. This is the very first night of the invasion. I remember the story now. very first night of the invasion. So it's like you're used to in training, like, hey, you take everything off, right? Take your boots off, your camis, you're like down to your skivvies and skivvy shirt. And I think that's what you guys did. So all your shit was piled in the sleeping system next to you. And he comes by, and I remember being on the gun. I look back, I see him. He's like looking at all your guys' gear staged right next to your sleeping bags. And then he just starts shaking you guys and be like, "Runner attack, man the guns!" And you guys are coming out, and you're like trying to grab your boots. He's like, "There's no time, get on the guns!" And you guys come up with like skivvies on, like silkies and Kevlars.
Yeah, and then you were the team leader, so you jumped off the gun so Lopez could get on the gun. And then you got in the team leader position. And I remember he goes, "And you're the worst. You're on post and you're sitting here in skivvies." And you go, "Oh, no, sir, I was on post." He's the gunner. So I moved over so he could jump on the gun.
Yeah.
But I mean, taking off boots and stuff is important if you don't want to get trench foot. You know, it's like you can't have boots on 24/7. And there was a certain point in time where we weren't even allowed to go to our packs. So we had one pair of socks. And every morning, or not every morning, but when I would take them off and then I would have to put the same pair back on, it would be in the shape of my foot. Like it wasn't even fabric anymore. Yeah. And I would have to take it, and I remember I would rub it together to try to get all the crust out, and then I would put it on. And I had slight trench foot. Did you end up having trench foot at all?
Yeah, by the time we got to, and to explain this to everybody, like our packs are attached to the outside of the Amtracs. So,
yeah, and so we weren't able to go to it. I don't remember why. Maybe it was one of the senior lance corporals rules or something, but we were not able to get the gear that we needed. And because of that, you can't wear the same pair of socks every day for 2 weeks. It doesn't work out, especially when you have boots on. And so this leads us to this current story that we're at, where you are like, "Okay, I'm not sleeping with my boots off. I'm going to be in combat gear. I'm going to be ready." You would sleep with full combat gear. You'd have your rifle. So if something would happen, you're like, boom, ready to jump into action. Oh, another part of that story, when he said, "We're being attacked, get on the line." I remember it's a panic, and I get up and I run to the line, and I realize my rifle was still in my sleeping bag. So I'm going back to grab my rifle, and he says, "We don't have time." And I'm like, "Well, I can't do much without my rifle." You know? So I grabbed the rifle and got online. So now fast forward to this other story. I'm on post. You guys, it's your turn to get some sleep. So I'm sitting there. I got the poncho on. It's pouring on us. I have the machine gun in front of me, and I have the optics. And I remember looking, and I fell asleep. You would be so delusional while you're out there from lack of sleep that you would fall asleep and you would think that you're still awake on post, because you would dream about being on post. Because in your mind, you're like, "I can't fall asleep. I can't fall asleep. I have to stay awake. I can't fall asleep." And then you go into dreamland and you're like, "There's the machine gun. Everything's good," right? I don't remember how I was woken up, but I was woken up. It was something like, "We're getting attacked." And you jump up, you get down in position, you got your rifle, you're ready to rock and roll. And I'm looking all over for the machine gun. The machine gun was gone.
Oh, I remember this now.
it was missing in action. While I fell asleep, I think it was the XO. He had taken the machine gun, moved, and hid it. I don't remember how much trouble I got in for that, but basically, you know, don't fall asleep. Long story short, but you were ready to rock and roll. You and Lopez, both of you jumped up, and I'm the one who's on post looking around.
Where's my
I remember it was like my heart dropped to my gut. I was like, "Oh no, he took the gun." Either I thought that he took the machine gun, or I at first I thought I had shifted in my sleep as I fell asleep. So I'm facing, and I'm looking around, and I couldn't find the machine gun anywhere. Do you remember if there was any consequences to that, or if he just gave us back the machine gun?
I don't remember, but I want to point something out. So it's like, you know, we can talk about this now. It's like, yeah, you know, every one of us fell asleep at some point on watch, right? And the reason for that is piss poor leadership. And I'm not talking about like the senior staff NCO level or the officers or anything like that. It was at the junior level. Remember, I go back to saying before, is like, we didn't have any NCOs. We had Lance Corporal squad leaders. And our squad leader at the time, I mean, if you were a junior Marine, and most of us were, man, we were on watch the whole time.
Yep.
I mean, it was constantly. We were doing the watch, and our senior lance corporals, a lot of them weren't filling in. Like they would rotate themselves out like once every 3 hours. We were doing it, 50% the whole invasion for a month. Like the human body can only go so long without sleep.
Yeah, it would if they did stand watch, it was. I mean, I don't even think it was every few hours. It was maybe once every few days or once a week or something like that. They really did not. And you're absolutely correct. A lot of it was piss poor leadership at that lower level. And nobody wants to fall asleep when there's the possibility of getting attacked. Nobody wants their throat slit because they fall asleep while they're in a hostile environment. Just like nobody wants to fall asleep while they're driving a car. Nobody's driving their car like, oh, I'm going to take a nap. No, it happens because the body shuts down and you have no choice. Your body just says, you know what? You've been up way too long. You haven't had enough food. You haven't had enough sleep. I'm turning this off, and you don't have a say in the matter. And that if you're okay with the next part of the story, that brings me to slippery rocks.
Have we got to that point yet? Because wasn't that at the pistol factory or something?
No, that was somewhere while we were still pushing in. We weren't at any sort of compound yet.
Okay.
Because we were outside, and this had taken place after my machine gun was taken from me. So after that event had taken place, I was incredibly tired, and so I decided to stand up. And we're on as Sergeant Major Morales would say, manning the front lines. Of course, Gunnery Sergeant Morales at the time were manning the front lines, which we were. We were basically manning the front lines. But I was so tired and so exhausted, I told myself I'm not going to fall asleep again on post. And I'm not able to stay awake. So what am I going to do? I'm going to stand up. So I stood up. I was like, you know what? It's dark enough. I tell you what, if there was a sniper, I would have been an easy target. So I stood up, and I'm standing there trying to stay awake. And again, lights out. I fell down, and I fell on top of my senior lance corporal at the time. I landed on top of him. I don't remember what he said, but I'm sure his reaction wasn't something pleasant. And my response was, those damn slippery rocks. I think that may have been the same time where I fell asleep and I woke up. This was one of the nights that he said he was going to stand watch, and so was our other senior lance corporal. They were both going to stand watch. But Lance Corporal Carter was supposed to come after me, so I was supposed to wake him up. But I had fallen asleep, and I woke up during the time he was supposed to be on post. So I was in a dilemma. If I wake him up now, he's going to know I fell asleep. So what can I do? I thought to myself, okay, I have a solution. I'm going to do the rest of his post, and then I'm going to wake up our next senior Lance Corporal, and I'm going to tell him that I tried waking up Lance Corporal Carter, but he just didn't want to wake up. And so that's what I did. And I even told Lance Corporal Carter, I was like, I woke you up, and you went, oh, yeah. And I woke you up again. You're like, I'm getting up. And then you didn't get up. So here's the worst part about it, though. When I woke up the next senior Lance Corporal, he said, I thought Carter was supposed to be waking me up. I said, oh, he didn't do his post. I couldn't wake him up. And he goes, oh, well, I'm not going to do mine.
Oh, my God.
So I ended up having to do his shift as well. But at least I didn't get in trouble at that point.
Yeah. God.
There's so many different. I can remember certain points within both deployments, our first deployment and our second deployment, but it's really hard to put it in order as far as the events that had taken place. When you mention something, it re-triggers that memory. But right now, the next thing I can think of is being at the pistol factory.
All right, so we'll stop short. I'll re-trigger your memory. So just outside of Baghdad, we finally get the word that, like, hey, we're literally outside of Baghdad. It's like, if Saddam has not used chemical weapons on us, we're probably not going to get hit with chemical weapons. They finally gave us the word to take our mop suits off, and we put our tricolor camis on, tricolor desert camis. And then also we found out that the trackers had these humanitarian MREs, these big yellow humanitarian MREs that they've been like squirrel hiding, rat holing on us. And so pick it up from there. And then we'll go into doing the crossing the river into Baghdad.
And we ended up staying at a UN compound at that point for a little while, right?
After we got into Baghdad.
Okay, yeah. I do remember that because at this point, they had separated you and I. So we weren't on the same team anymore. You were now with Schwartz?
No,
I think Naru. And then it was just me and Lopez, and we were on the rooftop with Lance Corporal Carter. So that was a good time. So it was just Lopez and I on this rooftop. And at this point, we had become good friends. So we're no longer fighting. We would, hook each other up with cigarettes and whatnot. At that point, we were getting cigarettes from the civilians in Iraq. They would sell us, cartons of cigarettes and stuff. So we're at the UN compound, and him and I are on 50% the entire time. So at this point, our senior Lance Corporal was not standing any watch at all. Well, since we were at a UN compound, him and I, we only had one watch as well. So we had one timepiece, and we would rotate during the day. We would rotate that timepiece for whoever was not on post. So we would trust the other person, like, hey, come back when it's your turn to take over. So he would go around searching the compound for food, whatever he could find. He would come back, take post. I would go looking for supplies. We found date syrup. We found milk powder. We found crackers, so we made cereal. We thought it was amazing. I believe we even found
socks.
I think there was MREs too, like Russian MREs or something we had found.
Yeah. I don't remember what their origin was.
Yeah, and they had little burning kits inside that you could heat up the food. So we were doing that, and then throughout the night, again, still 50-50 all night. So I think we were doing 1 hour on, 1 hour off, him and I. And again, as a reminder, we're on the rooftop position. Him and I came up with an agreement. We wanted to maximize the amount of sleep that we would get each night. So we would wake each other up like 30 seconds before we were supposed to be on post. So if he was supposed to be on post at, 1 a.m., I would wake him up at 12:59, right before it was his time to get up. And we made an agreement. When we wake the other person up, when we're the one being woken up for post, get up. Don't waste any time. Stand up. Boom. You go to sleep. Good. He wakes me up. I stand up. I remember I was like, I'm going to stand up. I have no choice. Stand up, start pacing. Doesn't matter how tired I am. If I'm moving, I'm going to stay awake. I'll be fine. I wake up. He goes to sleep. I remember him asking me, he goes, you good? I said, I'm good. Get your sleep. I'm good. And I'm pacing back and forth on the rooftop. I fell asleep walking on the rooftop, and I woke up one step from the edge. Could you imagine that's how you go out? Falling asleep on post and walking off the rooftop of a building? I woke up and stopped and saw how close I was to the edge. And I remember thinking to myself, that would have been one heck of a way to go. I hope they would tell my family like some fake story, not that I fell off the roof because I fell asleep. And while we were there, I ended up getting food poisoning too, from all the different things that we were picking up inside of the UN compound. I don't know what you guys were doing because you were at a different end of the base at the time because how we positioned the machine guns. Do you remember the UN compound very much, and what did you guys do?
I remember being there, and I remember finding the socks. They were amputee socks because they came in packages of one. And, yeah, and I remember, like we were talking about the trench rot and all that stuff on your feet. Like our feet were just awful. I remember putting those amputee socks on, and it was like within 24 hours, like the feet were cured. It was amazing. And I remember we had built a fire at some point. And I remember throwing my sock into the fire, and it was like alive because it was like going as it burned.
Yeah, you never know what pain in your feet feels like until you have trench foot.
Yeah.
And then, you think about it, we really didn't even have it nearly as bad as, think about World War I, where these guys were in, the trenches 24/7. They were living in them. Have you seen the documentary? I may have mentioned this to you before. I don't know how you feel about watching. I think you probably enjoy it, but I know some veterans, they don't really like watching military documentaries. I do. I really enjoy it. And there's a documentary called
They Will Not Grow Old.
They Shall Not Grow Old. Yeah, and it's the Western Front, and they remastered the footage. But just seeing that, and these guys are living in in water that comes up to their knees, depending on the season at the time. There's rats in there biting at them. You know, they're getting hit with artillery on a regular basis. And you can pull up photos of their feet, and they would lose toes. I mean, I just lost the first couple layers of skin on the bottom of my feet. You know, that's not nearly as bad as what some of those guys had to go through, which, you know, I wish I had studied military or even just, you know, United States history as far as the different military war sort of conflicts that we had been in, and studied more of what these guys before us had gone through, because that probably would have kept me a little bit more motivated. You know, getting out of the Marine Corps, or even just coming back from our first deployment in Iraq. I don't remember which corporal it was, but one of the corporals said to me, and it stuck with me for a long time. He said, when you get back after being in war, everything is going to be easy. And I remember everything was significantly easier getting back after having lived through some of the experiences that we went through in the first deployment. Now, when I tell people who, and I don't talk about stories very often when it comes to these military stories, and it's not because I don't like talking about them. I love talking about them. I feel like people don't want to hear me talk about them all the time. You know what I mean? I don't want to be the guy where they're like, he's going to come tell another war story. But I enjoy telling these stories. And what I would tell people that were not in the military, I'd say our first deployment into Iraq was just absolute miserable living conditions. It was terrible. The living conditions, everything about it just really, it sucked. And it was difficult to get through. Our second deployment, the fighting was more intense. So do you want more intense combat or miserable living conditions? Because our second deployment, besides the conflicts that we were in, and I know you said let's not jump ahead too far, but like the bases that we would be in, by the time we went back on our second deployment, the compounds were nice. The chow halls were pretty hooked up. We were getting 3 meals a day. We had a gym that we could work out in. We could send emails. We could watch DVDs that we would buy from the locals, you know, so life was significantly better, but some of the actual combat, the risk was significantly higher. And I know we would joke about it during our second deployment. We'd say, oh yeah, we took out all the idiots in the first deployment. now all the guys that know how to fight, those are the ones that are now here. And there'd be times where a bullet might get close to somebody, and we would always say, sniper. You know, like anyone who knew how to fire a weapon from the other side was instantly a sniper because the gunfire was getting close, you know?
Yeah. Hey, I want to back up a little bit. Do you remember this?
Vaguely.
So
I mean, I recognize the picture.
So this is us crossing Diyala River going into Baghdad. But I remember as soon as this apparently was like the first amphibious assault since like Vietnam or something like that. I remember them telling us that. But we I remember we go into the water, and I remember seeing like a few packs came off the Amtraks, and they were floating down the river. They had been detached, and I was like, oh god damn it, I hope one of those isn't mine. But on the other side, once we crossed the bank, I don't know if you remember this, man, there was a little village, and we kind of pushed through the village, and we started moving towards a tree line. And then we were up on air watch, and one of the Amtrackers in the turret yells out, BMP's in the tree line. And I knew what a BMP was. I'm sure most guys didn't. But, you know, that's enemy armor, right? And all of a sudden the freaking ramp drops, and we're getting out and getting online, and we're assaulting this tree line, and there's enemy armor in the tree line. So like SMAs are taking shots at the enemy armor, and we're like fire team rushing and, you know, putting suppressive fire and stuff on this tree line. Well, we get up to that tree line. I don't remember what Marine it was. Maybe I know we got some guys from our unit that are in here on the chat, but somebody gets up on one of those, I think it was a T-55, and takes a grenade and says, he yells out, here's a coconut for you monkeys. He throws it inside the hatch, and then it goes off. I don't remember who did that, but it happened.
I do remember that. I don't remember that part, but I definitely remember bits and pieces. Again, it makes me wish I kept a journal. I'd be going through and just, you know, reading off each page and really hitting the details of it. And as we talk, different stories keep popping up in my mind, different experiences, like, you know, the big event that happened at the pistol factory. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, which one?
One of our guys taking a bullet in the neck.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one that stands out. When we were in Najaf, when we were in this is of course the second deployment, when we were in that one building that we stayed in while we were in Najaf. And for downtime, one day we're throwing a football back and forth and we're calling out who's catching the football. You know, those little memories that really stick out in my mind. Running up down the stairs for a workout when we were in that building, sun tanning on the rooftop, did that a couple times. You know, little things. I don't know if you and Friedman talked about this, but when we were at that, and I know you kind of like going in order, but when we were at that building, I was an NCO at the time. He was still a Lance Corporal, and I was Corporal of the Guard. I'm walking around, I'm checking on all the different posts, and Friedman was up on the rooftop position, well, the floor right before the rooftop. And we thought it would be a good idea to start throwing paper planes out the window. We start folding up paper planes, we're throwing them out the window, we're having a good time. And I look back, and one of the officers is right behind us. And I say whatever time of day it was, I was like, "Good afternoon, sir." And Friedman goes, "Yeah, good afternoon, sir." Because he thought I was bullshitting. But I'm like, "No, dude, there's an officer behind you." And I was panicking. I ran around. I picked up all the paper airplanes. I was like, so stupid. Why am I doing something so stupid? I also have memories of being in Babylon. When we were in Babylon and we were
okay, so let's talk about that because we got to wrap. We're already over an hour. We haven't even like finished first deployment yet.
Oh, I know.
So yeah, we were in Al Hilla. We had a pistol. There was a old Iraqi pistol factory there. We operated out of that for a while. We also went to the Babylon ruins. So any memories that you have from those? I've got a few pictures of Babylon.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being there. I was on the other side of the river. There was just one. I believe there was a squad of riflemen, and then there was a couple machine gunners, and I think maybe a mortarman or something like that. And we had this one little position on, it was either the east or the west side. We were on the opposite side of Saddam's palace, and we were there for a month. I do recall Sergeant Ski was his name, right?
Yep. Same guy that whooped your ass over the cigarette.
Yep, he whooped my ass, that's for sure. He came by, and I had a lot of respect for him. I think he was a really good senior Marine. He
100%.
had come by at that position, and I was on a rooftop position, and he asked me if he could have a cigarette. So, of course, no problem. I tossed him a cigarette, and he says, "You have any matches?" I was like, "You need everything, huh?" So I throw him the matches, and he goes, "I got a little trick for you." And I said, "Okay, what's that?" He goes, "Check it out." He takes the cigarette, he takes the matchbook, and he lights it with one hand, and he lights the cigarette and closes it up. And I go, "Okay." And he's like, "That's it? You wanted something fucking else?" Dude, and that guy, there's that one picture of him too, as we were pushing into Iraq the first time, where he has the mop suit on and he has a cigarette. And it was like, that image represented a lot of what we were going through and how we were pushing in. You know which image I'm talking about? Do you have it?
Yeah, I bet I could find it real quick.
You probably could. But at Babylon, that is mostly what I mean. I remember he ended up jumping in to try to save those guys that were in the river. He ended up losing his life while he was trying to save them. That, of course, was a really significant event. When that happened, all of us on that side of the river, we went in as QRF. So I remember we bolted down the road. We got to the position and secured it. That was the most significant event that I remember from being there. I do remember, I believe we had a speech from General Mattis where he said, you know, this is where we see our true colors. You guys are going to be extended for another month. We have to continue pushing the fight. Babylon was after the pistol factory, or was it before the pistol factory?
It was after, and then I think we went back to the pistol factory because we got pulled back to Babylon to do security for the MEF. But Babylon was an interesting place. I mean, it's like you guys can see in these photos I'm showing. So it's like the walls and stuff that are all dilapidated and stuff. That's actual like Babylon, right? The ruins. Saddam excavated it. The stuff that looks a little bit more fresh and newer, like in the background, that's all stuff that Saddam built to try to replicate the original Babylon. But this is all original Babylon, like Nebuchadnezzar and stuff. And like we would drive through that at night. And I just remember going down these like roads thinking like, dang, dude, Jesus walked down these roads. And your hairs would stick up, man. You can just like feel like the spirits and presence and stuff. Like,
At the time, I didn't appreciate history as much as I do now. Now I'm a history buff. I absolutely love history. And it makes me think of Pompeii. Have you been to Pompeii?
No.
That is incredible. I went there this last December, and the amount of stuff that they have preserved, it's like you're walking down the city, during the Roman Empire. And Pompeii was a place of it was like luxury. The wealthy people would go there. It would be a vacation spot. But so much is preserved there, and walking down those streets, like you're talking about, the hair raising up, getting goosebumps. I wish I had appreciated it more while I was there, because when we were there, I was like, whatever. It's some buildings and I'm on this deployment. There's that statue of the lion that's on top of the man. Yep. What is that? Do you remember what that's supposed to represent? It's something about the power or the dominance of the forces that have built. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it was a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, talk about this real quick, and then I think we should probably wrap up OIF1 so we can get to OIF2. I don't think people understand the gravity. So like when we rolled into Baghdad, like the people hailed us as like liberators, man. I mean, thousands were in the streets. You guys can see that they're just surrounding our vehicles. And I mean, it was just absolutely nuts. This is, you guys have probably seen the video of civilians like pulling down the Saddam statue. Like it was just amazing. And I remember like an old timer, like an Iraqi elder, coming up to me and saying like, in broken English, like, what took you guys so long to get here? I'm like, young freaking Lance Corporal Marine, like, got here as soon as we could, dude.
Yeah, I remember that day. I don't know what we were doing out there, but we were out there for a good amount of time. I remember all of them being around us. I was a little nervous about it because I was thinking, I don't feel very secure with this many civilians around us, because the people that we were fighting were not in military uniform. So it was quite possible that they could have been mixed in with that crowd. Now, from what I do remember, everyone in that crowd was really nice. They were very friendly. They were saying, I don't know what I'm doing this for. I don't know what that's all about in that picture, but but that was a really, really interesting, fascinating experience. Like you said, they were coming up when there was, what was where were we when we crossed the bridge, and it was contact and we got out and after that, wherever we were, whichever city we were in at that point, I remember the locals. Where were we?
Saddam City.
I remember the locals telling us like, you guys need a shower. You guys stink.
Yeah.
That had already been what we were already pushing into the invasion, about a month or so into it at that point. And I think our initial push was 40 days.
Yeah, something like that.
When we finally were able to get haircuts and showers, there was mud just caked on our heads. As you're shaving, you just see the mud caked on. That's an experience that everyone should go through. I'll tell you what, you really start to appreciate other aspects of your life. But yeah, that was a really cool experience. And as you said, a lot of them were very happy that we were there. I'm sure a lot of them were not happy that we were there as well, but definitely a unique experience, no doubt.
Do you remember Gunny Collins with the big fire hose? We're all just in one long naked line, and just one by one we're coming up, and he's just hosing us down. It was the very first shower we got in country, I believe.
I don't remember that one, but I do remember when we had showers and the water was freezing and we had like 10 seconds. So it's like you were still dirty and we had to put back on our dirty clothes. It's like when you're going through recruit training and they just have you wagon wheel through the shower.
That was at the cigarette factory. That was the very first one.
The cigarette factory. Yep. Cigarette factory was tough too. We weren't there that long, but when we were there, I think we were doing 8 hours on, 4 hours off, 8 hours on, 4 hours off, if I recall correctly. And one night, Cox was delusional. I don't know what he ended up getting out of the Marine Corps as, but one day he's just standing in the middle of just, in the middle of the cigarette factory, and someone went up to him. They're like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm standing in line to take a piss." Like, there's no line. And there was another time when we were at the date factory. Him and I were on the post that it was up on a rooftop, but it was overlooking the wall. So if you're looking at it from your perspective, is this wall over here, and then the truck was over on this side where you and I were on, and I got in trouble because I yelled something, and Sergeant Burgess grabbed my leg and like pulled me down. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Vaguely.
Well, we were up on that post, him and I was pretty awake, and it was nighttime. And since we were on the rooftop, I was like, you know what? He's tired. If he wants to get some sleep, I'll let him sleep. I'm wide awake. If someone comes up the ladder, I can wake him up real quick, trying to help him out. Like, if I was super exhausted, I'd want to get some sleep too. And so he's sleeping, and he wakes up, and he looks over the edge, and he goes, "Esja, Elja." And then he falls back to sleep. I was like, there's no one there, buddy. I don't know who you're yelling at. Yeah, so that was a good time. And at the pistol factory, we also did the the date factory. We did the bonfire where we had everybody kind of doing like a gong show.
Yeah.
That was a good time. There was another time when we were driving on the Amtraks, and then I think the rear of the convoy was hit. And so everyone had to turn around and go back. By the time we got back, I think everything was already neutralized. What else? What else from the first one?
Do you remember you and I were on post? I think this was the date factory, and there was a couple little Iraqi kids down below our post, and they wanted us to like throw them candy or some.
I know where you're going with this.
They're like talking to us in like, Arabic. They're like, oh, so we go to them. I don't understand you. And then they start mocking us like in gibberish, but sounds like English. And we're like each other like, that sounds like English. How we were like going, blah, 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 blah. They were doing the same thing back at us, but making it sound like English. We're like, motherfuckers.
It was pretty funny. I know where you're going with that too. Yeah, we were having a good time joking with those kids. They were nice kids. And so I think we started telling them different words. We're like, hello. And they're like, hello. And they do a little dance. And what are you guys doing? He's like, what are you guys doing? And he does a little dance. And then I said, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And he stopped and he looked and he goes, woodchuck chuck chuck, woodchuck chuck, woodchuck chuck. Yeah, those were nice kids. They would come by and sell us soda, and they would sell us cigarettes. I don't know why their parents were allowing them to have cigarettes to sell. But yeah, I remember those were some really cool kids.
All right, let's wrap up OIF1, man, because we spent a long time talking about it. So we come back to the rear. We're back for like 6 months or so, and then important to note. So yeah, you did have the nickname Shitbag Schoemer, but once we got back, you were like born again, and you told everybody. And I remember this. You told everybody like, if I wanted to be, I could be a squared away Marine. And then, like, I remember like all our senior Marines back then. We're like, yeah, whatever, shut up, blah, blah, blah. So you're just like, because I was your roommate, you're like, fuck them, fuck those guys, man. I'm going to show them. And you did. You completely turned around. And next thing you know, you're winning a meritorious promotion board. You pick up corporal before all of us, and just really, really showed them, man. So let's.
I appreciate you mentioning that. And yeah, that was something that it did follow me throughout my Marine Corps career. But what it did do for me was it gave me the perspective of both sides. So if I had a junior Marine, as I progressed through the ranks, if I had a junior Marine that maybe was being a shitbag or doing shitbag type behaviors, I could let them know, like, hey, man, I was there. My nickname was literally Shitbag Schoemer. And I'll tell you what, while you're in the Marine Corps, you have one of two choices. You can either be a shitbag or you can be squared away. And both of them will require the same amount of work. One of them will absolutely suck. The other one, you'll be rewarded for putting in the effort. So do you want to put in the effort before you're told, or do you want to do it after you're told and you're seen as a, life is just way better if you become squared away. So when we came back, it was something that you actually had said, and I believe it may have been Lopez or one of the other machine gunners, because I was at the bottom of our section. And we started discussing teams, And at this point, I was a gunner. And I think you said, I want Schoemer as my gunner. And someone else said, no, I want Schoemer as my gunner. That made me feel good. I was like, man, these guys want me to be their gunner. That's awesome. And also what that corporal had said to me before, he says, when you get back, everything is going to seem significantly easier. So when we came back, I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this, and I'm not going to be the shitbag anymore. I'm going to do the best I can to learn everything, to make sure my uniforms are squared away, and just to do what I'm supposed to do before I'm told to do it. And everything turned around, and life was so much better. Being locked on and being a squared away Marine, 100 times better than being a shitbag Marine. But yeah, thanks. I appreciate you bringing that up.
All right, man. So we jump on the again, we've been back in the rear for about 6 months. So that's like the big change is Schoemer's now a corporal. He's either a team leader or squad leader. I can't remember. But we get on a ship, USS Denver. We do some training in Hawaii. I don't know if you got any stories about Hawaii.
I got to be on post when we were in Hawaii, and I was promoted to corporal on ship.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, nice. Which was brutal. I didn't realize how many NCOs we had in our company until I picked up corporal. And, it's like an initiate. I don't know if they still do it. I know it's not something people are supposed to do, but to me, I liked it and I wanted it. I asked for it. So getting the Charlie horses for the blood stripe, like to me, it was being welcomed into the group, and it really meant a lot to me. People think like, oh, that's hazing. No, that's not hazing. That's like, hey, you're part of us, man. You're part of the team, and we're accepting you as one of us. So that was a really important moment in my Marine Corps career, and getting those blood stripes with those Charlie horses. Then when we were the first day, we ended up doing a 12-mile hike. I don't remember how long the hike was, but we did a hike, and I remember my legs were just throbbing the entire time. And then when everybody else got to go on Liberty, I had to go on post because I was the brand new corporal, and it had to be a corporal that went on post. So I was on post, and I had maybe one day where I got to hang out and, drink and have a good time. And then we were back on ship and we were off.
Yeah. I don't remember too much about Hawaii. I do remember it was good training though. So.
Yeah, the training was good. Oh, that's when Granger ended up getting shrapnel in his eye.
Oh yeah. It was a cook-off, right?
Yeah. It was, I don't remember whose fault it was or how it happened, but I do, the latch on the machine gun was not locking in place. So it kept popping open. And so they were just holding it down while he was firing, and it popped up and a piece flew into his eye. He jumps back and he grabs his eye. And I remember thinking, man, this guy's going to lose sight in one eye, but they were able to pull it out and he was perfectly fine. That actually ended up happening to one of my dogs, not with a machine gun, but one of my dogs. I was out in the desert and I was playing fetch. I know this isn't Marine Corps stuff, but it correlates with that story. And I threw the ball and it went into one of those thorn bushes that they have in the desert. And she ran into it, grabbed the ball and took off and kept running around playing. Everything was fine. Next day, I'm outside, I'm playing tug with her. She jumps up, the sunlight hits her eye perfectly, and I can see the thorn in her eyeball, the actual eyeball. Long story short, I took her to a specialist. They pulled it out. They stitched it up. She's fine. Crazy, nice. Right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the big thing that I remember happening in Hawaii was him going through that. That had to be painful.
I forgot all about that, man. This is at a time where, iPro wasn't very common. Mm-hmm. We finally got issued iPro when I think we got to Iraq, or maybe before we left, but it's like during the whole OIF1, like none of us wore iPro. Like it wasn't even a thing. So
I do remember getting iPro on our second deployment.
Yeah.
What were they called? The Oakleys?
Yeah, they were Oakleys.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so, we had the Oakleys. Yep.
Okay,
so I don't remember too much else from OIF1. I'm sure if I started writing it down, I'd probably be able to come up with more. I do remember leaving and pulling out and being really stoked to get back. You said you're ready to move on to OIF2, right?
Yeah, we're already on ship, man.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's right. We're on
ship. That ship has sailed.
That's right. It's sorry, I got up early. I went to bed late last night. That's my excuse.
All right, we get to Kuwait. Again, USS Denver. We fly into Kuwait, and then we do a big-ass convoy to Najaf. So pick it up from there.
Najaf was the first thing we did, huh?
Yep, Fob Hotel.
On the second one, yep. I do remember being in that building. The main thing, of course, that I remember from Najaf, I don't remember too many of the patrols or a lot of the small things. When we first got there, I was part of the COC, Center of Command, Center of Control, I think it's called, since I was a corporal. So I had to do that most of the time, which was pretty much monitoring computers and whatnot. And that's when, shortly after that, you guys, oh yeah, that was another location. So we had that location, then we had the building, right? And we would go back and forth between the two.
Yeah, the governor's compound.
There's Motivated Lopez on the left. Yeah, the government compound or governor's compound. And this is a story that I often tell people, how you guys were part of the first group that ended up going into the cemetery. And we had driven by Najaf Cemetery, and you could see the insurgents, whatever you want to describe that, the enemy, whatever. They would be sitting on the tombs. They had RPGs. They had sniper rifles, the Dragunov, or what was it called?
Yeah. Dragunov.
Yeah, and they, like, close enough to where you could see the facial expressions. But according to, you know, the Geneva Convention or the rules of engagement, that's considered a religious area. So no attacking, hands off. But once they attacked us, that's when everything hit the fan. And you were part of the first group that had gone in, and you guys were there for 3 days. At that time, I was still at the COC, hearing everything that was happening. So that was a pretty long 3 days. I'm sure significantly longer for you while you were out there. That's some of the stories that I would tell my recruits too when I was a drill instructor. Since you were there for the first 3 days, what are the main things you remember from those 3 days? And then I'll jump on after that when we went after you guys, because I went in there, I think, a day or two after you had already come back.
Yeah, so we took over Najaf from the Army. I don't remember what Army unit it was, but just like Nate explained, the Mahdi Army, led by Maltadar Sadr, they had essentially full control of the Najaf cemetery, which is like the largest cemetery in the whole entire Muslim religion. It's a big deal. And we weren't allowed in there. And the Army told us in like the turnover, like, hey, this is their area. We don't go in there. They don't come out. We don't shoot at them. They don't shoot at us. And it's like, we just, we're coming back off of, the invasion, right? Like, we're all combat veterans. Like, we're just like, wait, excuse me, we do what? Like, these guys have weapons and they, taunt you guys and you don't engage them? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it wasn't but maybe a week after the Army left and we completed our RIP that a massive firefight broke out. So, I'll leave it up to you guys to, put together what probably took place. But essentially what happened is CAT, Combined Anti-Armor Team, got in a gun battle with the Mahdi Army. What I presume happened is the Mahdi Army came out like they were with the Army with their RPGs, their weapons, and they displayed them. And then CAT just was like, fuck you, and gave him a little 50 cal slap. And that just, that stirred the beehive, and big firefight ensued. And next thing I know, they shot down a Huey, and a Huey crashed. And just like Black Hawk Down, we had to get out there. We set up a cordon around the down Huey, and then they started hitting our cordon to get to the down Huey. So we repelled that assault until they could get that Huey extracted out of there. And then next thing you know, we're getting online. We're pushing in the cemetery. So we're out there hooking and jabbing with the Mahdi Army for 3 days. And then at some point, we would get relieved by somebody. I don't remember who it was. And then we pull back to the governor's compound where you guys take over and you guys go back out into the cemetery to pick up the fight.
Yeah, and they said that fighting, when it had happened, what you experienced in those 3 days, that was considered the worst fighting or most intense fighting seen since Vietnam.
Well, since at least the invasion, for sure.
Well, they would say since Vietnam. I do recall that because I remember that being a very, very intense fight. And of course, not long after that, Fallujah happened.
Yeah.
And that kind of overshadowed the things that had taken place in Najaf. But there's a lot to the story that I guess you just want me to jump to my story, but
yeah, this is all about you, brother.
you did a lot during those 3 days. And I don't remember all the details of what you did while you were out there, but I do remember you getting a Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat Valor. And, if maybe a higher ranking officer had seen what you did while you were out there, it's quite possible you could have received a Silver Star or something, based on the stories I've heard from other people that saw the things that you did out there. So I would tell those types of stories to my recruits before going out for final drill, before doing the crucible, really getting them pumped up. But all right, I'll tell my side of the story. We hear that you guys are pulling out. You come back to the, it was the government compound, governor's compound, you said?
Yeah.
You guys got back there. At that point, I was there. I remember you getting back. You're dirty. You guys are beat up. You're dropping your gear. And we get word that we're going to be going out there to pick up where you guys had left off. And when we're getting ready, I remember you guys coming up to us and wishing us luck and hugging us and shit, because you know what we're getting ready to go into. You just left it. Those 3 days that you participated in history, one wrong movement, one wrong choice, being in one wrong position, you wouldn't be here right now. That was a very dangerous 3 days that a lot of you guys had experienced. So you're letting us know, you're getting ready to go out there. Make sure you have your magazines prepped. Make sure you have your water. Make sure, you guys have each other's back, because it's going to be serious. I was pretty nervous getting ready to go to the cemetery after seeing what you guys had gone through prior to us going out. We put together a lot of the magazines that we had. So if we had to change ammo, we could put it together really quickly. So we were putting batteries in between the magazines and taping them up. So if we ran out, we could flip it around. We get out there. Once we get into position, at this point, I was a squad leader. No, I was a squad leader. So we pull up and we're outside of the cemetery up against the wall. We have the AM trackers. I'm with my machine gun squad, which it was only a 5-man team. Friedman was on that team. So I had 2 machine gun teams, 2 men on each team, and myself. We were, of course, short on people. And we had the riflemen out there from, I don't remember which platoon was with us. And we had the AM trackers. So we get there and I figure, it's going to be good if we keep an overhead watch. So I leave one of the machine gun teams on top of the Amtrak, and I take the other machine gun team, which had Friedman and Chavez, and we get down to a wall to cover the main avenue of approach. So we have the road that goes into the cemetery. I have them sit there. So Friedman's watching Chavez's back, and he's watching the road. I go back to the Amtrak. I find the rifleman. I let the squad leader know, the corporal. I say, hey, when you guys push into the cemetery, let me know so we can push in when you guys push in, and we could have one of you guys on our far left flank. Because as you know, you don't want to have a machine gun unit on the very end flanks. You want them on flanks, but you want riflemen to support their flanks as well. So we're not the far left unit or far left team. And he says, no problem. I'll let you know when we push in. So I go back to Friedman's team. We're sitting there. Nothing happens. It's dark. It's quiet. You hear some gunfire, pop shots here and there, some machine gun fire, but it's really sporadic. It's not consistent. I go back to the AM tracker and my machine gun team on post there. And I say, hey, where's Corporal whatever? And they said, oh, they had already pushed into the cemetery. And I said, are you kidding me? He pushed in and he didn't come tell me. They're like, yeah, he's already in there. So I say, okay. So I keep the one machine gun team on top of the Amtrak. I go back to Friedman's team and I say, hey, the riflemen already pushed in. We got to push in. We have to go in and we have to find them. So he says, okay. So I go back to the team that's on the Amtrak. And this is a very close distance. I'm not far from the Amtrak. It's really short walking distance. So I'd run back over there. And I said, okay, we're going to push in. So I need you guys to watch Chavez's back because I left him there by himself. So I said, watch his back. He's going to watch the road. And myself and Friedman, we're going to push into the cemetery by ourselves. So, okay, everyone's watching each other's back. It's just like playing chess. You know, if you're playing chess, you always want to make sure when you move, you got another piece covering that movement. So we have everyone covered. Freeman and I, we walk in, and I remember I was terrified at this point. You know, after seeing you guys come back, I'm like, I'm walking in. you guys had told us that there's underground tunnels. They're popping up from behind you. You can walk into where you see nothing, and all of a sudden you're getting shot in from the back. So we're pushing in pretty slowly. We're walking in, and somebody shoots off a flare. The flare pops off, lights up the entire scene. Now, I don't have any memory of practicing what to do when a flare pops off after boot camp or School of Infantry. And as we discussed before, I was a shitbag in School of Infantry and in boot camp. So I didn't remember what you were supposed to do when a flare goes off, which when a flare goes off, you drop and you stop moving. You lay down and you freeze. I thought that you just freeze. That was all I remembered. I didn't remember the laying down part. So the flare pops off and I freeze. And both Freeman and I are standing there, and it's super bright at this point. And I'm looking at Friedman, he's looking at me, and I'm like, this is retarded. This is so stupid. I should not be standing here like this. We're going to get shot. And so Friedman takes off, I take off, and we get cover. It dies down, and we're looking around, and we can't find the rifleman anywhere. And Freeman stands up and yells the corporal's name. I don't remember the corporal's name, but he's like, "Corporal!" and yells his name. And at that point, I'm like, well, they know where we are. A little bit farther up the road, we're probably talking about 20 yards or so, there was a small building. And it was tall enough to where we could see a good amount of the cemetery if we made it to that building. So I look at Freeman, I say, hey, you want to go clear that building? He says, let's go do it. We get to the building, we're walking in. Now, like you said earlier, we didn't have all the high-speed gear. You know, we had to work with what we had. So we had one pair of optics. Freeman had a pistol. He didn't even have a rifle. And I had my rifle. So I'm walking in with my rifle chicken wing. I got the optics. Freeman's walking in with a little red light and a pistol. The first step into the building, I stepped on a plastic bottle, and I damn near had a heart attack. Oh, my gosh. I thought I stepped on a bomb or something. We get in, there's one room and a doorway and then another room and stairs that went up and stairs that went down. So we get past the one wall. You could tell that some of the wall had been smashed out. And I walk in and I'm looking in the corner of the room and it looks like there's a hole. And I say to Freeman, I say, does that look like a hole to you? And I take the optics and I hold him over so he can see because I had it dummy corded to my gear. And he looks and he goes, I think it is. So we slowly walk over and we look down and it goes down and splits both ways. So we agreed that if we're going to put the machine gun on the rooftop of this building, we have to secure this basement. We have to go down there. We have to secure it. And I'm looking down there and I'm thinking, we're going to walk down there and there's going to be someone down there with a knife. We're going to get stabbed. We're going to get shot. So I said, you want to throw a grenade down there? And he says, yeah, let's do it. So he takes a grenade. He throws it down there. We run around the corner. We wait till it goes off. Boom, it goes off. And we're like, all right, let's run in. Because when it goes off, if they're not dead, they're definitely not aware of what's going on. So we go running down and all this dust comes flying up. And so we go back and we wait for the dust to settle. The dust finally settles. It takes like 10 minutes for the dust to settle. We go back and look down. And by the point when we look down, he goes, or I look at him and I say, it's cleared, right? And he goes, yeah, it's cleared. Okay, great. We go up, we clear the rooftop position. We come back down, we go get Chavez, and we bring Chavez up onto the rooftop position. Once we get on the rooftop position, we had a little device. I don't remember what it was called, but it flashed so the night vision goggles could see it. So our guys knew that we were on that rooftop position. I believe, and I could be mixing up some details, but I believe either Friedman or Chavez recognized that there was movement out in the cemetery pretty far off. And he says, hey, I think we have a visual on the enemy. We called it in and they said, don't fire, don't engage. We don't know who it is. It could be the army out there and we don't want any friendly fire. So we hold off. About maybe 10 minutes or so after that, our entire unit ends up getting hit by mortar fire. All of a sudden, mortars start dropping in on our position. And as you know, when you hear a mortar coming in, you basically get down in position and you hope it doesn't hit you. You hear it whistling in, boom, goes off. So I can see where it's impacting. It's impacting to the right of my position. And I hear it going off, then it goes off, and we start to hear people yelling. So, of course, we had some casualties. A couple of guys were hit at that point. Once that happens, we get called in and they tell us like, hey, engage. We think that could be the enemy mortar unit. I don't know if it was, but we started opening up with our machine gun fire and rifle fire. And then after that, it kind of quieted back out. So if that was them, I don't know. If we hit them, I don't know. If we scared them off, I really don't know. But at that point, it kind of went quiet. Again, it went back to some shots here and there, but the rest of the night was pretty quiet. We stayed on that rooftop position up until the point where till the sun started to come up. Once we started to notice there was a little bit of daylight, we pulled back down from that position because we didn't want to be easily identified by the enemy being on the rooftop. And there wasn't really much cover. There was a little bit of cover, but not much. So you could easily see us up there. So we come back down, we get back to the Amtrak, we load up in the Amtrak. At this point, it's probably maybe 0600, maybe somewhere around there. We stay in that position till around 8 a.m. I remember at about 8 a.m., they decide, okay, we're pushing into the cemetery. We're going to push in until we make contact. And once we make contact, we're going to fight. Okay. They kept a couple of us inside of the Amtrak. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 of us inside of the Amtrak, and they had everyone else outside.
Hey, real quick, man, I'm just going to show this picture so people can know what we're talking about. I just pulled this off Google. You can just Google Najaf Cemetery. But this is, when he says pushing into it, this is what he's talking about. This is what the Najaf Cemetery looks like. This is what these devil dogs are pushing into to meet the enemy. So
yeah, it was pretty intense. And, you know, as you told us when you came back, and what I mentioned earlier is there were tunnels. There were underground tunnels. They could pop up from behind you. They could be in front of you. They could be in a building. They were all over the place in there. And as we pushed in, Lopez was one of the guys on the ground. Friedman and myself, we were inside of the Amtrak. Now, that guy, I'll tell you right now, that just like yourself, you and Friedman, you talk about two brave, either brave or crazy. I don't know. Friedman might be, he's brave, but that guy, some of the things he did. So we're pushing in on the Amtrak. We're inside the Amtrak. I was the senior Marine inside of the Amtrak. So basically when we made contact after we had pushed in, we probably pushed in maybe 100 yards or so, where we were far enough inside of the cemetery that they could start firing from us from all directions. And once we got about 100 yards, all of a sudden, contact. The Amtrak is getting hit by bullets. RPGs are now being shot. Marines are firing, and it's chaos at this point. Being inside of the Amtrak, I was thinking to myself, man, how's it got to be for the guys that are not in the Amtrak right now? Like, yeah, we may have been a target because we're the Amtrak, but we also have armor. You know, we're pretty well protected unless we get hit by an RPG or something like that. So since I was a senior Marine, I really didn't know what to do. I said, you know, look through the cracks, because as the Amtrak doors open up on the top, those metal doors were pretty thick. And then you have the hinges that it opens on. So there was a gap, probably about 1.5 inches that you could peek through. And you could see, you know what I'm talking about, right? Am I explaining that well? You could peek through that gap. So I told everyone, I said, okay, the 3 or 4 of us that were in the Amtrak, I said, look for a possible enemy position. Once you identify one, everybody let me know. I'll pop up first. Once I start firing, everybody else pops up. Fire what you can, and then come back inside, and we'll start looking, you know, if there's more targets or we can see an enemy or something like that. So, okay, Roger, great. I pop up, I start firing. Everyone else pops up and starts firing. We come back down. This is the part that I was saying where Friedman might be a little brave or a little crazy. I don't know. Those go hand in hand. But he had a saw at the point. Now, he was a machine gunner, but he was originally a rifleman, and the riflemen have the saw. So he had a saw that was left over by one of the other Marines that had been a casualty the night before. So he's using the saw to fire. He gets up. He's firing with that. We had already gotten back down into the Amtrak, and I could see tracers shooting past him as his whole chest is exposed while he's firing the saw. I don't know if he could see it, but I could, because I'm looking up, and I see tracers shooting past him. And I'm yelling as loud as I can. I'm like, Friedman! Because you can't hear anything. He has a misfire. So what does he do? He does immediate action. He's like, and he goes to fire again. Click, another misfire. He does immediate action. Click. Okay, now what do? Remedial action. So he opens it up, gets the feed tray cover while he's getting shot at. this entire time. Yeah, I don't know if the training just kicked in and he's like, I got to do this. I have to put rounds down range. I don't know what it was, but he did end up coming back down. We did that maybe 5 or 6 more times. Then at that point, they had all the other Marines get back into the Amtrak and we pulled out. So I don't know what we accomplished while we were in there, but there was some firefighting, some combat, some mortar fire, but still nothing compared to what you guys had experienced those first 3 days. And, you know, sometimes looking back on it, you know, it's like, I almost wish I was there for those 3 days that you were, but at the same time, I'm glad I wasn't. Because what you guys went through for those 3 days, that was probably some of the most intense fighting you saw while you were in, I would imagine.
Well, I don't want to undercut what you guys did, because you guys, we lost Sergeant Parkinson when you guys were out there. Mm-hmm. So I don't want you to downplay your guys' combat out there in that Najaf cemetery. I mean, Myrix was hit, Sergeant Parkinson was killed. Like, you guys saw some intensive combat yourself. So
yeah. I mean, it's definitely the most intense combat that I can remember from both deployments. I remember there was 11 firefights that I was in, because I remember specifically adding up the different firefights, whether the firefight lasted 15 minutes or it lasted, you know, that whole night. Like, I counted that as one firefight that whole time that I was there.
Yeah.
But not looking, I don't remember all 11. I can't write them out. Oh, I have a different story that was during this deployment. You remember when we were doing the sweep where we were looking for weapons? And I don't know exactly where we were, but there was a lot of vegetation. We were more north at this point. And we had the trucks, and I think at this point we had the 7-ton vehicles. We weren't even in the Amtrak, so it was during the second deployment. And we're going down the road, and we have everybody lined up, and we're kind of doing a sweep, looking for weapons or looking for anything that could be used by the enemy at that point. And we found an entire trash bag filled with weapons and fully loaded magazines ready to go. So we're there, and I was there with Dorenzo. I remember Dorenzo being there, and there was an officer there and a few other Marines. Dorenzo notices there was 3 guys watching us from a distance. They were maybe 75 yards or so away from our position, and there was a wall of bushes, and they were right at the edge of the bushes looking at us. And Dorenzo tells the officer, he says, "Hey, sir, there's 3 guys watching us from the position over there." So the officer, I don't remember who it was, he sees them, and he looks back at us, and he goes, he tells Dorenzo and myself, he says, "When I tell you guys to go, I want you to go apprehend them. Go." And like, once he said that, we take off. Once we take off and they see us, they take off around the corner. This was another one of those situations where I'm running there. It's like, in the Marine Corps, when you're given an order, I don't know what they do with the training that makes this happen, but in that, you don't really question it. You just do it. You're like, I don't have a choice. I have to do this. So we take off, they run away. And as we're running, I'm like, we're going to run around the corner. They're going to be in position, just waiting for us, and we're going to get lit up. But of course that didn't happen. We come around the corner, and they ended up going probably another 50 yards, but they stopped. I think they were scared, and we caught them, but they were just civilians that were interested in what was going on. You know what I mean? Could you imagine how scary that would be if you're just a normal civilian and you're like, whoa, the military's out here, and you're watching and you're like, this is crazy. Can you believe that? And all of a sudden 2 of them come running at you. Oh, I would shit myself, you know?
All right. I want to get back to Najaf. So you come out of the cemetery, and then like the whole Battle of Najaf's going on. Like, there's active, like the Army's now down there. They've reinforced us. There's other 1-4 companies, and, you know, taking part in this fight. And then at some point, Bravo Company conducts what's called the Kufa raid. So talk about the Kufa raid. And here's a spectacular photo from the Kufa raid.
Yep. I do remember.
That's you in the back, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. I'm glad that photo was taken at that moment in time. And I'll tell you why. Just like in the movies, and what's really cool about modern technology is I don't know how often you care to get down and play a good war video game or anything like that. But recently I picked up the new Call of Duty World War II Vanguard game, and it's so incredibly detailed and it seems so realistic that it kind of it's interesting because now things that we have done are not things that we've only seen in movies, like the movie Platoon where they're burning shit in those containers. Like, man, we did that. I know what burning shit smells like. You know, I had to burn more than my fair share. But then getting the, you know, like before a mission or in a movie where they have the map and they're pointing out, okay, you're going to be going here. The machine gunners are going to be here. The riflemen are going to move in at this position. And you see it. So we had all those briefings going on before we did this. And of course, when you have a map, you know, a satellite image of where you're going to be going, it never quite looks like how it is when you get there. You have this idea in your mind and then you get there, you're like, this doesn't look like how I remembered from the map. But we get there and we get off the, do you remember if we were on 7 tons or if we were on Amtrak's?
7 tons.
So yeah, we get there, we jump off the 7 ton and I don't know where we are. I know there's a road. We run down this road and there's this building off in the distance that we have to get to. We start going towards that building. There was a smaller building that we had to clear out. And I get there, I don't remember who was with me, but we're trying to kick down the door and it was a really flimsy door. And as we're kicking the door, the latch held really strong, but the door was bending in as we were kicking it. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, I kicked this door like 10 times by now. You know, you think in the movies, boom, one kick and you're in the room. Nope, not for me, not on this occasion. So we finally bust the door open. Nobody's in there. We clear it. Okay, great. And we start moving towards the main building that we have to get to. And at this point, a Humvee pulls up and it has 2 giant speakers on it, something that you would see at a modern concert of that time. And all of a sudden, it starts playing as loud as possible, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. I remember thinking to myself, well, I am really in the movies. Like, this is insane. They're playing Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. You talk about having one heck of a high at that moment. We get to the building, and this is, you know, it was our entire machine gun section. The way we coordinated this operation, that's our entire machine gun section up there. Where are you in that photo?
I actually, the platoon, because we were in the Najaf cemetery for those first 3 days, they had us doing, I think, rear security or something like that. So they wanted you guys to get the bulk of the fun on this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we get into that building. When we get into that building, the riflemen had already cleared it out and I had my optics on. So get inside the building, it's dark, but I can see everyone. I'm telling you, it was just like a movie. You get in there and they're like, all right, machine gunners, let's go, let's go. We run up the stairs, we get to that rooftop position, and right there you can see that's motivated Chavez behind the machine gun, and that's Friedman looking over his shoulder, and then I'm behind him with my rifle looking. We get to the position, and we get the word, and we start opening fire. So we have all the machine guns, I believe, up on that position. There was also a 50 caliber sniper rifle on the other side of the camera. So, you know, to the right side of the camera. And as we're firing, we're doing talking guns, you know, everything that we've trained. It's hard to tell in this photo, but there's more rooftop in front of us right there. So that's not the edge. It doesn't drop down where the machine gun is resting on the bipod legs. There's actually more rooftop there. And then it drops down farther in front. So I know it's hard to tell in that photo. Well, when he first started firing with the 240 Golf right there, some of the bullets had hit the rooftop in front of us. I thought it was incoming fire. I didn't realize it was ours going out. So once I saw that, I jumped back and I landed on my back. And once I'm on my back, I look to my left and to my right, and nobody else is laying down. And so I calmly get up, get back in the position. I'm like, nothing happened, nothing to see. And this photo was taken right after that. So I had already jumped on my back, and then I got back up trying to play it cool. Like, no, I didn't just do that. As we're firing, you couldn't see the sky. The sky was pretty dark at this moment. Well, there had been helicopters that came in. Do you know if they were Apaches? I don't know what kind of helicopters they had come in, but the helicopters came in and they were doing talking guns. So all of a sudden you see this hellfire coming down from the right and then a bunch coming down the left. They're talking guns. We have the machine guns. The mortars are doing their thing. I mean, it was an all out, I mean, as you said earlier, I mean, we really did. It was all out the raid or whatever you want to call it at that moment in time. But that's mostly what I remember from that, from after we were firing, we were called out and we left. We didn't go into the building that we were engaging in this photo. So we pretty much got on top of that rooftop. We fired, I think we ended up firing 8,000 or maybe actually it might have been like 16,000 machine gun rounds. I think the mortarmen fired like 140 mortars or something like that. And the assaultmen fired 18 rockets. We took one casualty and it wasn't a KIA. It was, I believe it was from backblast. They didn't do backblast all clear and somebody got hit with a little bit of backblast. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall it?
I don't recall who got injured.
I don't recall either. Maybe I'm making it up. I don't know. But I'm pretty confident that we had the one person get hit with a little bit of backblast. Nothing that was even severe. Like it wasn't even worth mentioning. But that's what I remember from that. What do you said you were doing something else at that point?
Yeah, they had us, the rifle platoon I was attached to. I think we were doing rear security or something.
Did you talk about this with Friedman?
Yeah, we did.
What did he say about it?
He was sharing his stories on the actual raid itself. So I mean, I can't remember how big the enemy element was at that Kufa Technical College, but it was a very successful raid, and we, Bravo 1-4 pretty much fucking annihilated the enemy there.
Yeah, we really did. That was one of the times where we went in and came out definitely on top, no doubt about that.
So I want to move past. So after this raid. So, I mean, we really took the fight to the enemy in the Battle of Najaf, man. There was one more thing about the Battle of Najaf, and it was supposed to be the final raid to take out Muqtada al-Sadr's Mahdi army. Do you remember this night right here?
Is that the night I flipped the Humvee?
No. This was going to be the final assault on the mosque.
I do remember it, yeah. And there was one point we were even supposed to do a drive-by attack on the cemetery, but that ended up getting called off.
Yeah, that was it. That was the final assault. We were gonna go right up, run a gauntlet, and then deploy right outside the mosque. And Kurdish Special Forces were gonna take the mosque.
Yeah, but so we didn't end up pushing through and doing it though, right?
No, they called it off at their last minute because some head honcho, whoever Muqtada al-Sadr answers to, came down. He was in like the UK for some special surgery or something, and he came back, and I don't know, some bullcrap deal was worked out to where the Mahdi army got to essentially walk free after just leaving their weapons in place or something like that. It was bullshit. We were going to finish them off, and
yeah. Do you remember that one raid we were supposed to do where, I don't know if you were on that raid, but I ended up flipping a Humvee and the raid was called off?
Yeah, I remember that.
That was so. I'll quickly talk about that because that is an interesting little story, and it also puts some things into perspective. You know how before you experience something, you think based on your knowledge and your capabilities that if something were to happen, oh, I could get myself out of that, or I could deal with that situation. And you really don't know until that situation happens. And what I'm talking about is if a Humvee was to fall or go into a river or something. So I know there were a few casualties, American casualties, where Humvees fell into a river and the soldiers, Marines, whatever, they would end up drowning. And I thought to myself, of course, that's tragic, but I also thought, like, if that happened to me, I'd be able to get out of that situation. I'm a top swimmer. I ended up being a McQuist, Marine Combat Instructor of Water Survival. If that happens, no problem. I'd be able to get out. No, I wouldn't. And I'll tell you why I know this. They ended up having me drive the Humvee quite often. I don't remember which staff sergeant it was, but he liked me being in the driver's seat. So I was always driving when we were going to positions, and I would jump out and be the squad leader, and then I would drive again because we were short on, we didn't have enough drivers for the Humvees. So I'm driving and we're following right behind Cat. Now, they had already done the reconnaissance before us. They knew where they were going, and we were driving with lights out. So it was pretty dark. So I don't have any headlights on, and I had a pair of 14 Bravos. So I'm driving, looking through that, and I remember thinking to myself, I can't see shit. I'm going to crash. I can't see a thing. So I'm driving, and in my head, I'm like, I'm going to crash. I know I'm going to. I can't see where I'm going, and I have to keep up with Cat, and they were cruising. Well, the road ended up turning, and I didn't see them turn. I thought they were still going straight. So I kept going straight, and I went off the road. So as I went off, the road dropped down, so I feel it, and we end up flipping, and we flipped completely upside down. When we flipped upside down, that was another one of those moments in time where my heart dropped because Kirk was on the machine gun up on top. So I'm thinking, we're upside down at this point. I hope he's safe. I hope we didn't smash him. I don't know where he is. And when you're inside of a Humvee, and it was an up-armored Humvee, so it was one of the heavy-duty ones, not the flimsy doors. You know, it was those big, heavy, 500-pound doors, really heavy-duty. And it flips around. You're in your normal space. You know, imagine being in a car. And then all of a sudden, when you're upside down, that space goes from this to this. And when we're upside down, I can hear someone in the back going, help, help. And I'm thinking that could be Kirk. He's smashed by something. And I was freaking out. Well, we had another guy with us from another unit who was claustrophobic, and the ammo cans for the Mark 19 had fallen on top of him. Kirk was smart. When he felt it rolling, he ducked inside and held his position. So when it rolled, he was completely fine. To get out of that Humvee when it flipped over, it took us about 15 to 20 minutes to get out of it on dry land. So this is how I know there's no way that ended up happening. And I think about that, you know, you look back at certain times and you often think, at least I do, what if that was a river? You know, what if that mortar landed a little bit closer than what it did? When we were in, this is another big part of our second deployment, was when we were in Abu Ghraib. And when we got to Abu Ghraib and we were relieving the Marines that were there before us, they were letting us know, like, hey, we're getting attacked every day here. So, you know, we had, I believe it was First Sergeant Morales at the time and Gunnery Sergeant Collins, and they said, well, we're going to go out and we're going to do patrols every hour to make sure they can't set up any IEDs so we can catch them if they are doing it. And we had gone to the Iraqi police department, and we were sitting there for maybe 30 minutes, 35 minutes. And when we pulled out of that position, exactly where our Humvees were, mortars started landing in that position. So it's like, just got out of there in time. There was another time when, I don't remember which situation this was, but it was when our packs were still attached to the Amtrak. I had gotten out of the Amtrak and I squatted down, and a bullet hit the pack or the Amtrak right next to us. I remember thinking, like, man, if we're a little bit to the side, it's always like, what if this had happened? What if that had happened? And somehow, miraculously, out of all the different things that happened, got out clean, made it out safe. Even when we got back, were you weren't in the Amtrak that flipped over when we were doing training when we came back? You were in that one as well?
Yeah.
You know, and think about that. So I'll say the story for those that are listening. We were training our Amtraks. We went up a road that was on a hillside. This road was not big enough for Amtraks. So you think about it, you got the hill, you have the road, and then more hill. And we were probably up maybe, the hill went down probably around, I'd say 50 yards maybe, at least what I can remember. The Amtrak rolls on its side. The only thing that kept it from rolling down the hill and possibly killing half of us in there or really injuring us was we still had our packs attached to the side of the Amtrak. And I remember complaining about it. I was like, why do we still have the packs attached? We've been on the field 2 days now. Let's take the packs off. You know, and those packs are what saved us in that situation. So, I mean, just going back to flipping the Humvee, we ended up getting out. They popped flare. Another Humvee had rolled over behind us, and we ended up not even doing the raid. And after that, we didn't even do lights out anymore. We would drive with our headlights on. We're like, all right, we're not going to flip any more Humvees.
Let's go to Abu Ghraib, since you brought it up, man. So we leave Najaf. We go up to Abu Ghraib prison to relieve a rifle company from 3-1, because this is the same time that the second Fallujah offensive is going to take place. So we go up there, and just like Nate said, It's a hot area. This is right outside Abu Ghraib prison's right outside of Fallujah. I mean, it's like the suburbs of Fallujah. So that company goes up there to take part, and we take over their battle space essentially so that they can go take part in Fallujah.
We were what? It was Operation Phantom Phantom Shield.
Phantom Fury.
They were Phantom Fury. I thought we were Phantom Shield.
Oh fuck! I don't know what our shit was.
Because we were basically, part of the units that were right outside of Fallujah, as you said, and we were stopping anyone who's trying to escape at that point and apprehending them. That, as I mentioned earlier, that position was constantly being attacked. I mean, on a regular basis. A lot of us were kind of upset that we were there, though, and we weren't actually part of the team pushing into Fallujah, because when they were pushing into Fallujah, not only could we see it on the news in the chow hall, but we could hear it as it was taking place. We were like, we're right here. Send us in. Let us help those guys. But there was one incident that I love telling people, and it's pretty funny. I'm not bashing on anyone in this story, but the National Guard was involved. We were at the MWR is what it was called, right? Mm-hmm. So the little building, it was basically at the center of the camp that we had at Abu Ghraib prison. And you can go there and you can make phone calls. They had video games. You could watch movies. It was kind of like a little bit of R&R while we were out there. So we're inside of that building. I think you may have been there as well when this happened. You can let me know. I don't remember who was with me when this happened, but the base ends up being attacked. We're getting attacked. Abu Ghraib prison is under fire. So we go running to the door. We're like, we got to get out there. This is our job. We are Marine Corps infantry. Literally, our job is to fight the enemy. And there was it might have been an E7 or E8 with the National Guard, and they're standing by the door and they're like, no one's leaving. Everybody stays inside this building. No one leaves. And we look at them and we say, we're Marine Corps infantry. This is our job. And he goes, let the Marines go. Let the Marines go. So he opens the door. We go running out. I remember we're running across the open field to get to the position where the base was being attacked. By the time we had gotten there, the attack was already over. But I love that story where they're like, nobody leaves. Nobody leaves. And then once we say we're Marine Corps infantry, they're like, let them go. Were you in the building for that? Or
I don't remember that. I do remember going to the chow hall when like the first time mortars started dropping. It was like our first time. It was a really nice mess hall, and we're all sitting in there. Like the air raid sirens are going off, and like everybody's underneath the tables except for like our guys. We're just eating. It's like, why is everybody ducking under tables? What the hell?
Yeah, you become really desensitized to it. There was one time when I think it was First Sergeant Morales at this point, right? He was our company first sergeant. Yep. And he was talking to all the NCOs, and we're over by the area where weapons was. Weapons platoon was off in that corner, and we had that little prison area, so everyone had their own cell to sleep in. So I spent some time in a prison cell. And so we're in a little group circle, and he's filling us in. He's talking to us. I can't recall what he was talking about. But a mortar, we hear a mortar come in, you hear the whistle, and you hear it explode, and everybody just ignores it. We continue to talk, and then it got a little bit closer, and we still ignored it. And then it landed like right on top of us, like 20 feet away. And everybody, I mean, it was a little farther than that, but that one hit close. And once that hit, everybody's eyes got wide, and we're like, boom, gone at that point. But you become desensitized to it. You're there. I mean, I don't know how you felt the second time you went out to Iraq, but as I said earlier, the first time I was really nervous. I was really scared. I'm not going to lie and say, yeah, I was super. I mean, you were ready for it. I know you were. But then on the second deployment, I had already accepted it. I was like, if I die, I die. That's part of the job. There was no worries, which is kind of weird. But then the odd part is I didn't want to go a third time because I thought the third time might be the time I don't come back, which is actually the reason why I ended up doing. So a lot of times when I tell people how long I was in the Marine Corps, it was 7 years and 7 months. And people are like, 7 years and 7 months? That doesn't even make sense when you're enlisted because it's 4-year enlistments usually, unless you have a 5-year contract or something like that. And the reason why was I re-enlisted 3 years and 7 months in. And as you know, when you re-enlist, if you've been in 3 years and 7 months and you re-enlist, you have the choice of, at least when I re-enlisted, you can re-enlist 4 years from that point, or you can re-enlist where they finish off your first 4 and they add 4 to that. So I could have done 8 years with the re-enlistment or the 7 years, 7 months. I chose the first option, 7 years, 7 months, because I was re-enlisting, as you already know, to be a drill instructor. And I knew when I finished being a drill instructor, if I had done the 8 years instead of the 7 years, 7 months, I probably would have gone back to an infantry unit, and I probably could have been deployed again. The way I looked at it, I was like, I did my time as a grunt. I went in, I fought. Now I'm going to be a drill instructor. And then after that, I was like, okay, now I'm ready to go out and do different things. And sometimes I do regret getting out because I'm about to be 38, which is crazy to me. And it's like I could be retiring, at this point.
Yeah.
I remember when I was first getting in, my dad would tell me, he's like, you could do 20 years and retire at 38. He's like, 38 is so young. And in my head, I'm like, 38 is old. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I want to go back to Abu Ghraib prison because I got a few photos to share. And I want to show this one. This is actually a photo of me, but this is something I talked about with Friedman. I don't know if you remember this, but this is the execution chamber at Abu Ghraib prison, Saddam's execution chamber. Do you remember this?
Vaguely.
All right, so that's me holding the lever, right, to drop these trapdoors to hang people. And here's the hooks, and these things are rubbed raw, right? Like Saddam hung a lot of people. But I want to point out, you guys see these orbs? This is like, no kidding, you see them, they're all over the place in this picture. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
This is the only picture I have, maybe with the exception of Babylon, in the ruins of Babylon, that have these orbs in them. And it's in an execution chamber.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts? Dude.
I don't even know if I even went to that because I don't have any memory of that execution chamber.
So there's also these little like cells where they would keep the Iraqis would keep people that were going to be executed. And I'm talking Saddam's regime here, guys. Mm-hmm. Don't make those mistakes here. Saddam.
I know I said vaguely, but now I don't even think I vaguely.
Yeah. But they had cells leading up to this execution chamber, and like literally there were claw marks on the cells for this execution chamber. It was very eerie. So
yeah, that's some terrifying stuff. You try to put yourself in position of people that had to live those horrendous experiences. And
yeah.
When I was out in Europe in December, we also went to, hey, there's a puppy. We also went to one of the concentration camps from World War II, and I was able to step into those gas chambers. That is, absolutely terrifying what some of those people had to experience. Have you been to any of those concentration camps in Germany?
No.
Yeah, you talk about an experience. We went there and we had a tour guide, and the woman was just so knowledgeable on everything as we were going through and pointing out the stuff that these people had to go through. And something I didn't know, I don't know if you're aware of this, but after we had liberated the people that were in those camps, General Eisenhower went out and he brought the local civilians and made them come into the camps and and showed them what they were doing to the people that were there.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, they didn't even know. So yeah, this photo, that's right outside of the prison in Abu Ghraib, and I found a puppy.
So that's going to segue into our later talk about your dog stuff. So, all right, let's wrap up OIF2 because we got a little bit more of your career to cover. So we finish up at Babylon, go back to Najaf, and then Al Qut for a while. And we had some good living at Al Qut. They gave us little like cans to live in and stuff. You remember that?
Yeah. Karbala.
Oh yeah, was that Karbala?
Karbala, yeah. And in fact, I don't know if Friedman mentioned this, but him and we were actually able to get a bottle of vodka while we were there.
From the Polish or what?
Yeah, did he tell you about that?
He didn't mention it in the stream, but I would imagine that's where it comes from.
Oh yeah. I can tell you the story if you want to hear it, or we could jump to something else.
Let's start moving back on redeployments.
Okay. Moving back on what?
So anyway, we come back to the States, and now it's like hey, there's not enough time in your contract. It's either re-enlist or extend and go on another deployment 1-4 doing a Westpac or Okinawa, maybe it was. I can't remember what it was, but you and I made the decision we were going to get out. And the reason I can speak for myself, the reason I was going to get out is because I'd already done 2 pumps with 1-4, went into combat. That's what I joined the Marine Corps to do. And I just met my soon-to-be wife, or would eventually be my wife. And I just had a great feeling about her. She was a 10, and you know her, obviously. She was the best I was ever going to pull. And so I made the decision to get out. And you, at the time, made the decision to get out. So what was your thinking around that?
Yeah, same as you. I mean, I didn't have someone that I thought I was going to marry, but I thought, you know what, I did the 4 years I served, did it honorably. I'm ready to get out. I had certain things that I was thinking of doing when I was to get out. I had a couple different options. I was like, okay, I'm going to get certified as a personal trainer, which I ended up doing while we were at Las Pogas. And I was going to go to school, and I was going to work with one of my buddies as well that has his own flooring company. So I had different ideas of what I wanted to do. Yeah, that was one of our hikes we did when we came back. Man, look how young we look. So that was my initial thought. And while we were at Las Pogas, or that was 11th Marines, right?
Yeah, we ended up getting sent over to 11th Marines to finish out our contract.
Yeah, so we were there, and I started to regret leaving the infantry unit. And if you remember, I contacted First Sergeant Collins, and I asked him if he could get me back to the unit. And he's reached back out. He said, I got good news. I'm going to be able to get you back. And at that point, I changed my mind again. And I said, First Sergeant, I actually changed my mind. I'm going to continue as far. I don't know if I told him I was going to get out, or if at that point I had decided to re-enlist to be a drill instructor. I think that could have been it, because that would at least gave me a little bit of leverage. Like, hey, I'm going to be a drill instructor. He was a drill instructor. So, but I do remember him. He wasn't too happy about the fact that I had to try to pull all these strings, and then I backed out of it. So that was a little bit of shitbag Schoemer coming back out.
Didn't he tell you to like stand at the corner of Las Pogas and Barcelona Road at a
time?
He was gonna come whoop your ass or something like that?
He did say that, but I ended up seeing him later on after I was a drill instructor, and so we were able to bullshit a little bit about that. I also saw Sergeant Major Morales when I was a drill instructor, which was really cool. And the Sergeant Major that was at 11th Marines, I was talking to him, and I was interested in being a drill instructor at that time, because it's something that I always thought would be really, really cool to do, but I was also very intimidated by being a drill instructor, because after you go through boot camp and you see what they do, you know those guys work. You know they're putting in the hours. They're yelling so much, none of them could even talk. And so, yeah, that was my first full cycle right there, yelling at one of the recruits. The funny thing is, if you look at the comments of that photo, because that is on my Facebook page, that recruit has commented in the photo. He's like, that's me you're yelling at. So I was considering re-enlisting to be a drill instructor, and I was like, I'm only going to re-enlist if I could be a drill instructor. And I was talking to the Sergeant Major at 11th Marines. I don't remember his name, but he looks at me and he says, you know what? I could see a campaign cover on you. And he says, and it looks good. And that just kind of got me even more pumped up and more motivated to do it. So I knew it was going to be something that I could look back on and be really glad that I did it and I had that experience. But I was also really intimidated to do it. But then again, I came back from my second deployment from Iraq. So I thought to myself, if there's any time in my life that I could be a drill instructor, it's right now. Right now is the time I can do it. So I re-enlisted. They guaranteed that I would be a drill instructor. And so shortly after that, I found myself at drill instructor school, learning how to be a drill instructor. And while I was a drill instructor, they call us board Marines, you know, where they put you on boards and things like that. So when I was a board Marine, as you talked about earlier, when I was promoted meritoriously to corporal, I was also considered a board Marine when I made it to be a drill instructor. And so they put me on multiple boards. I ended up winning drill instructor of the quarter, and I was awarded meritorious staff sergeant, which was really cool. I did 7 cycles. I made around, or I helped train around 500 Marines. Yeah, that was when I was a senior drill instructor. So that was also some of the best experiences in my life that I had as well, was being a drill instructor. But that was also the hardest job I've ever had, was being a Marine Corps drill instructor. I mean, there were times where I wanted to go back to Iraq. I was like, man, send me back to Iraq. I need a break. It was tough. It was tough. It was, you would yell so much that you would spit up blood. I mean, you can hear my voice is still kind of messed up from being a drill instructor. It never fully went back to normal. And every drill instructor, for the most part, shaves their head because you have to get a haircut twice a week. So if you have to get a haircut twice a week, it's not even worth investing the time, and you don't even have free time as a drill instructor. So everyone just shaves it. It just makes most sense. You're not going home anyways. My first cycle as a drill instructor, I went home, I believe, 7 times, and it was after 2300, and I had to be back around 4 a.m. because I had to be on deck an hour prior to the recruits getting up.
I remember you telling me a story where your father flew in to see you in San Diego, and this is early on when you were a drill instructor, and your senior drill instructor, the night before, you had told him hey, my dad's gonna be in town during this time, and the night before he's like, nope, you're working.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, guys, this is a sergeant with 2 combat tours in Iraq, and you're still treating him like shit. And I'm like, you got to be the story he was telling me about.
Yeah, what was interesting about it is the drill instructors that were, in my opinion, some of the best leaders that were there when I was there as a junior drill instructor, I guess you can say, a new hat is what they often call it, were the guys that had combat MOSs. So the grunts and they treated the other drill instructors as sergeants, as staff sergeants. Some of the other guys, and this isn't everyone, but there was some guys that were there before I was, and there's nothing wrong with being admin. There's nothing wrong with being some of these other MOSs. But at the same time, they didn't respect what we did before we had gotten there. It's we were the boot again. It's one of my seniors, he was admin, and I had gotten back from my second deployment, and he's talking to me like I'm some new boot. And I remember these guys, when they treated me that way, I told myself, when I move up and I become a senior drill instructor, I'm going to treat these other drill instructors like sergeants of Marines, like staff sergeants of Marines. I never played those games. And what ended up happening too is just how we're still really great friends from the experience that we had. It's I consider you a brother. If you ever need anything, I got your back. And some of these guys that I was just drill instructor with too, when I had moved up and they were a drill instructor, technically underneath me, but I never saw it that way. I was we're a team. We work together. We train together. And in fact, a couple of the guys, so more recently, a lot of the guys that I was a drill instructor with, they're back at the depot now as, sergeants major or, company first sergeants. One of my buddies who's a first sergeant, he was my J when I was a senior, the guy who teaches drill, and I was the senior drill instructor. And he hit me up and had me come down, and I got to talk to him and hang out with him. You think he would have wanted to reach out and us meet up again after all these years if I was one of those assholes that treated him like he was a boot?
Right.
Of course not. So yeah, there were some of those games that would be played. My first cycle, there was some hazing that took place. In fact, my partial cycle, so you end up doing what's called a partial more often than not when you first become a drill instructor, because you get to your company and you just jump in wherever they are in training. So I was Alpha Company, and when I first showed up, they were already up north and they were on field week. So the first day was the night prior to the 8-mile hike. So it's my first night. I get there and my J has me checking every single recruit's pack the night before the hike, basically fixing all these packs and stuff. I'm like, why am I fixing a recruit's pack when I'm the drill instructor? Shouldn't we show them what to do, have them doing it? And if they don't have it right the next day, we IT them and we make them pay for it. What am I doing? And then of course the very first hike, I don't know if I told you this, but the very first hike that I did was the 8-mile hike. So I'm running up and down, I'm yelling at the recruits. I'm pretty motivated because I'm a Marine Corps drill instructor right now. This is awesome. And I run up to one recruit and I yell at him, and I yell at him as loud as I could, and I shit myself. Like, I was like, die! And then I felt it. And I walked away, and I remember I walked up to the J, because the J was in the back of the platoon, the senior was in the front, and I'm running up and down the center yelling at the recruits. I get to the J and I say, hey, Jay, I just shit myself. he looks at me and he goes, yes, you did. So I took off. I went to a porta-john. I ripped it off, threw it away, cleaned up, and I go running back. And in my head, I'm like, it's my real first day as the new drill instructor, and I shit myself on a hike. I'm like, this is a great way to start this. And I remember some of the senior drill instructors were like, what's up with the new hat? Why is he falling out of the hike? What's up with the new hat? I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And I know I'm not the only drill instructor that's happened to. When you're yelling as loud and as hard as you can, if you got the runs, it may not be a good day for you. But I did end up doing 7 cycles. There's a lot of stories that I used to talk about it more, but again, as time goes on and those experiences become farther and farther in the past, I don't remember as much. But just like how you and I are talking about, OIF 1 and OIF 2, a lot of these memories start coming back. There's been times where I've gotten with drill instructor buddies of mine, and we start talking about different experiences, and they start mentioning stories. I'm like, oh, I do remember that. Or yeah, I remember that story.
So while you're at the drill field, I know you did some interesting stuff. So you talked about already, you became a McQuist instructor. I saw this picture where you're participating in like the strongest warrior competition. So
I took 8th place in that competition, but that right there, that was a boulder carry. So that was a 244-pound boulder or rock. And that was all based on distance. That one wasn't based on time. However far you could carry that would be counted towards your score. So that one, I actually beat everyone. I carried that farther than anyone else. And then they had a Humvee pull. They had what they called a farmer's run, where you had to run 225-pound dumbbells a certain distance. They had a military press and then something else. So yeah, that was fun. I did that twice. That was really exhausting. Like you said, I did the McQuist. So for those that are not familiar, I know I said it earlier, but that's Marine Combat Instructor of Water Survival. When I went to the depot, I was already a first-class swimmer. Now, when you're a drill instructor, they call it being in the trenches. So when you're in the trenches, that's when you're a drill instructor and you have a platoon of recruits and you're training them to be Marines. But then you also go on quota. So quota, those are the guys, for every Marine that's listening, when you're on quota as a drill instructor, those are the guys that are teaching McMap. Those are the guys that are, teaching Marine Corps history and those different things when you go out and there's other drill instructors teaching you stuff, not your drill instructors. Those are still receiving drill instructors. Those are guys that are on quota. So that's being on quota. You usually do 2 years in the trenches. So my 2 years, a little more than 2 years, I was able to do 7 cycles. And then you usually spend about a year on quota. So while I was on quota, I was able to be a swim instructor, which was considered, the best quota to have while on the drill field. And when I was going through McQuist training, the instructor was telling us, he said, every stroke that you take in the water, when you're swimming, just think time off, time off, time off, time off. Because when you become a swim instructor for the recruits, your day is going to be done at 9:30, and we would get off super early, especially if it was like during the winter months when the platoons were smaller. We'd knock that out in no time and we'd be done by 9:30. We were ready to go on liberty at that point. Then we ended up having an officer that came in, and he didn't like the fact that we were getting off so early. So he would make us stay till 1700 every day. I think it was 1700. I'm not sure, but he would make us stay the entire day because he didn't like us getting off early. So we wouldn't have anything to do the entire time except train, or we would play underwater torpedo. Underwater torpedo, hands down, the best sport I've ever played. If you go on YouTube and you type in underwater torpedo now, there's some Marines that had gotten out and they're trying to make it an actual sport. So people are now competing in this underwater torpedo game. But that was so much fun. I mean, I can't even tell you how much fun it was playing underwater torpedo every day when I was a combat swim instructor on the drill field. I'm trying to think of some different stories that might be worthwhile. You know, of course, you got the IT and recruits. You remember the gong show that you do at the end of boot camp?
Yeah.
So they were still doing that when I was a drill instructor, and I'm assuming that they're still doing it. Oh man, I lost my train of thought. I had something I was going to say about that. Whatever, I lost it. It looks like you're trying to look up something.
I'm pulling up pictures for the next topic.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, you have the different billets as a drill instructor. So, of course, you start out as a 4th hat, 3rd hat, then you're the J, and then you're the senior. My 4th hat cycle, basically, when you're a 4th hat, your only job is to yell at recruits and instill discipline. Like, that's basically what your team will tell you. Now, if you talk to higher ups, they're like, no, you're a drill instructor and you're teaching them everything that a drill instructor does. But the way that they do it is like the 4th hat, he's the guy that if he walks on deck, the recruits better be nervous because he's going to lay down the discipline. And if he walks on deck and they're not afraid, then he's not doing his job. And then the 3rd hat is very similar to the 4th hat, but the 3rd hat teaches how to be a Marine. So the 3rd hat teaches you how to lace your boots, how to make the rack, really all the little things that teaches you to be a Marine. And then the J teaches all the drill. You know, every time I say deep, you breathe in. When I say move, you say kill. And they teach all the drill. And then the senior is like the platoon commander. The senior doesn't really teach as much. Of course, it depends on the senior because the senior can teach whatever they like. You know, when I became a senior, there'd be times I might teach a little bit, but I always wanted to give that opportunity to my J, my 3rd hat. I didn't want to take that experience away from them. Like some seniors will jump in and they'll be like, I could teach drill better than the J can, so I'm going to teach drill. It's like, well, now you're taking away from the J. Let him teach the platoon, you know?
Yeah. Well, I guess it was while you were maybe at the pool, I got married and you came down for my wedding in Texas. So I've got a nice little picture here. And you were a groomsman in my wedding. And there you are right there. Look at that stud.
Rah. Yeah, and actually when you had that wedding, I was a senior drill instructor.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was a senior drill instructor at the time, and the day I made it back was final drill. Now, the senior is the one that takes the platoon out for final drill. I was still hungover from your wedding. So that's a good photo right there.
It is a good photo.
So I had to go out. Look at all those medals. So when I got back, I had to go out and I had to take my platoon out for final drill while having a hangover. I remember walking out. So they call it taking the X. You walk out to the X. So the new hat takes the platoon out for initial drill, and then the senior takes them out for final drill. Now, believe it or not, I was actually really, really good at drill. I hated drill as a recruit, but as a drill instructor, I loved drill. I really did. It was one of my favorite things was teaching drill. And when you get good at teaching drill and your platoon looks good, man, that's a good feeling. And like my second J cycle, I had it down even better. And I really worked at it. I really wanted my drill to be good. And I would seek out other drill instructors that were really good at teaching drill. And I'd be like, man, how did you get the platoon to do that? And I would use my platoon to basically talk shit to other drill instructors that were in my company. You know, I'd stop my platoon. I'd have them do a left face with another platoon. And I would have my platoon do inspection arms, and I'd have them do inspection arms. And my platoon would crush it. And I'd be like, right face, forward march, you know, just show them like, look how good my platoon can do it. So I came out for drill, and every time I took the X, I would memorize the entire drill card. So I had all the drill cards memorized. You can look at it while you're doing the drill. And just like the recruits are being graded for drill, so is the drill instructor. The drill masters are out there, they're grading the platoon and they're grading you. So you get a score as well. And I remember when I got to the X, before I pulled out my sword, I had to take a deep breath. I could feel my head pounding still from the night before, draw my sword, call the platoon to fall in. And I actually ended up taking, I don't know if I took the highest score, but I believe my score was a 102. And the only way you can get higher than a perfect is if you do a sing song. So while you're marching the platoon, if you do a sing song for a certain amount of steps, then they give you additional points. So I didn't lose any points, and I was able to get 2 extra points from my sing song. So even though I was a little hungover from that incredible wedding, which was a blast, by the way, I remember seeing video and I'm like dancing around like this. I don't remember who it was. It was one of your buddies that was out there, and he's like, "Why is he? What is this?" You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. There may be video of you hogtied in your dress blues while passed out.
Oh yeah. I definitely had one too many drinks that night. But you know what? It was a good time. It was a blast, and I'm glad that I was able to get back and still get that good score on the final drill.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So let's segue into so you leave the Marine Corps, but you end up going into dog training, but you end up doing a lot of stuff with veterans and too. So we're already at almost 3 hours. So
I know. Sorry, I didn't expect it to go this long.
No, you're all right, man. But I definitely want to talk a little bit about your after Marine Corps career, because you've not, even though you left the Marine Corps, you do a lot of stuff for veterans. So kind of talk about how you get into dog training and then working with veterans and stuff as well.
Okay, yeah. All right. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I moved up to Los Angeles, and one of my buddies had helped me learn some computer graphics skills. So I started working on After Effects and another program called Mocha. I put together what they call a demo reel, and I was able to get work pretty quickly in the post-production industry once I was out of the Marine Corps. So I think it took me about 4 months, and then I was working full-time as a post-production artist. I did that for 2 years, and sitting behind a desk all day just wasn't for me. You know, after being a drill instructor, after being a grunt, and now I'm sitting at a desk all day, it didn't feel right. I didn't really like it, and it would take the entire day. So when I was a post-production artist, you would start at around 10 a.m. and you would finish up at 8 p.m. So that's your whole day. All right. So I did that for 2 years. I decided it wasn't for me. And I was working for this one company called Nomad. And I loved working for them. I was a freelance artist. And when I would work for them, they would often have me on standby. So I would just hang out and I would be getting paid. And I've always been obsessed with dogs. I've loved dogs. And the moment I was able to have a dog, I had one, I bought one. When I was a combat swim instructor, I had a golden retriever. So there's me, I'm doing some protection training. And I decided while I had the downtime, I was researching dog training. I was watching videos of Cesar Millan, of course, because everybody knows Cesar Millan. And someone's like, "Man, you really like dog training. Why don't you do something with dog training?" And I said, "Yeah, you know what? That might be a good idea." One of my buddies from high school is also a professional dog trainer. He invited me to come down to his facility in Chicago. I spent 3 weeks with this facility, and it just made sense to me being a dog trainer. I went to the Tom Rose School. I finished second in my class in the professionals, so one guy beat me. And then I finished top of my class as well in the Masters. Same guy beat me in Masters. He was good, though. I mean, that dude went on to win national championships. I mean, that guy is an exceptional dog trainer. After doing that, I came back to Los Angeles, set up my dog training business. I had a lot of success with it. It was called Orion Canine Academy. Tom Rose reached back out to me, asked me if I wanted to come back to the school to be an assistant instructor. I jumped on that opportunity because I knew that would give me the chance to learn more about being a dog trainer. And, as you know, any profession, even though you've been in the Marine Corps almost 20 years now, I'm sure you still study up. You're still learning things. You're still trying to get as much information as possible. I'm not sure if you've studied any Stoicism. I think I mentioned it last time, but I've really become a fan of the concept of ancient or Stoic philosophy. And one of the great Stoics, Seneca, he said, "I study other philosophers like a spy in an enemy's camp." So I'm always I still read dog training books. I still study other dog trainers because it's something that you keep doing. And the second you stop learning is the second you start to fail. So always constant. So I was like, this is an opportunity to become even more of a dog trainer than I currently am. So I went there. I was an assistant instructor for about a year. I left to help another company establish their dog training school. And I was working with another dog training company in Colorado, came back to California. All right, then I lived in Colorado for about a year. I also set up a business out there called Denver Dog Training. Left, came back to California. I started working with, I basically put together a nonprofit, and the nonprofit was, the mission was to improve the quality of life for all dogs by educating those that care for them. Yeah, that's one of my drill instructor buddies. So he came down on a hike. So that hike, so I'm getting up to that part of the story, which unfortunately the pandemic caused camis and canines to shut down. So that's what I'm wearing right there, camis and canines. So they're no longer up and running. They couldn't sustain through the pandemic. The overhead of the operations was over $12,000 a month. And when people aren't donating and you're not able to do it, so it ended up getting shut down. I'm not sure if they're going to try to pick it back up, but I would definitely support them if they do. I'm currently working with another nonprofit called Operation Therapy Dog. Their goal is to try to train 500 PTSD service dogs annually for veterans. So I'm the head canine trainer for that organization. I don't actually train the dogs, but I put together the training program, and I work with other trainers that are going to come in and work with the dogs. So I established a training program for that, but they're still in development. So they've only had 2 dogs that they've been working on so far. After I came back, I set up that nonprofit. Shortly after that, I was Animal Planet reached out to me. Actually, it wasn't Animal Planet. It was Plimsoll Production Company. They reached out to me and they asked me if I would be interested in co-hosting a show where we rescue dogs and we train them to be service dogs. So I said, yeah, of course I'd be interested. I did an interview with them. They liked the interview and they said, hey, we're going to be putting together a sizzle reel. I was like, okay, whatever that is. So what a sizzle reel is, it's almost like a pilot episode. So the pilot episode is the first episode they make to pitch the show. Well, for this, they did a sizzle reel. It's much shorter. And the reason for that is they had already made the show in the UK. So Plimsoll Production Company is a UK production company. Rescue Dog to Super Dog was originally a UK show, and they wanted to bring it to the American audience. So they just put together a sizzle reel to show myself and the other co-host to Animal Planet and the head of Discovery to decide whether or not they wanted to greenlight the show. So we did the sizzle reel, and she goes, if it goes well, you'll hear back from us. If not, you'll never see me again. And I said, sounds good. Well, about 2 weeks later, she gives me a call and she says, congratulations, you have a show on Animal Planet. So I was like, holy cow. All right, I got a show on Animal Planet. So we did the show. It took about 3 months to film. You can still pull it up and watch it. We did six episodes. In the first episode, I worked with a veteran named Kalani. Now, Kalani was in the Marine Corps. I don't know if he ended up going back in. He was an officer. So last time I spoke with him, he was a major. And after we finished filming the show, he reached back out to me and he said, hey, I wanted to know if you wanted to be involved with camis and canines. You know, and the mission of camis and canines, we help homeless veterans and we help heal those wounds by pairing them up with dogs. And you could be the head trainer. And I was like, of course, absolutely. After that, I was up in LA. So because of that, I moved down to San Diego in order to help establish and build the facility. We had a ranch, 220 acres, I think the ranch was. We were able to house around 20 veterans. We had about 20 at one point. And then that photo that you showed earlier, that was one of our fundraiser hikes. We did it for, we only did 2 years of it, but the hike was, I don't remember exactly all the details, but the hike was this is where 220 comes from. It was a 220-mile hike. We started from the farthest base north of LA, and we hiked all the way down to Camis and Canines facility. We did 20 miles a day, and that was, what does it say? 22 veterans a day on average commit suicide. So yeah, I think it was 22. So we were doing 22 miles a day. We carried 50-pound packs. So the 50 pounds represented what an average homeless veteran carries. So that's why we had the 50-pound pack. And while we were doing the hike, it was just a fundraiser hike. And that first hike, I believe we raised about $50,000. that went to helping more veterans, rescuing more dogs, and pairing them together. So that's what Camis and Canines was all about. And like I said, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, they weren't able to maintain that, $12,000 a month overhead, and they ended up having to close down the facility. And that's shortly after that, the founder of Operation Therapy Dog reached out and asked if I could help put together their dog training program for their service dogs for veterans. So that's pretty much everything after getting out of the Marine Corps, not to mention training jujitsu. Which, I'm not training right now, but I'm going to be getting back into it here real soon. Had to stop because the schools and everything have been closing down because of these different variants and whatnot. But if you're not doing jujitsu, you should be.
Well, hell, man, we're almost at five mics till 3 hours. I can't believe it went this long.
I know. I can't believe it either. I saw that you and Freeman did about 2 hours, and I was like, all right, we'll probably do about an hour.
Yeah. So
it's always great catching up with you and catching up with anyone that I served with. There's something about, guys that you served with in the Marine Corps that once you start talking to them, you don't want to stop.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and the bonds that form. The picture I'm about to show here is like Nate was there when I mobilized for Afghanistan and left. He was there before I left, and he was there when I got back, man. It's just there's something about Marines and the bonds you form in combat and serving together that are just enduring.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Rosebud would give me a call and she's like, hey, we're doing this for Brent, I'm like, I'm there. You can hit me up, I'm going to show up. That's for sure. Yeah, and it's hard to believe that just a couple years ago, we had the 15-year reunion for the Najaf cemetery battle.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to go to every single one of those reunions until they stop doing them. It actually made me think about I think it might have been the War of 1812. I don't think it was the Revolutionary War. I don't remember. It might have been the Civil War. I'm not quite sure. But one of these wars, I saw these photos where they showed every single year after the war had ended, these veterans from this one unit, they got together every single year. And you can see these photos, and like they showed the last one where there's like 4 of them still alive. And they're still getting together, and seeing those guys that they were in the trenches with, that they were fighting with. Again, I don't remember which conflict it was. It could have been any of them, But it's something that I think will continue to go on as long as there's the military and as long as there's conflicts. There's going to be that bond that just won't be broken.
Oh, 100%. All right, guys. Well, we got a few minutes before the 3 hours. We might as well hit 3 hours.
Yeah, why not?
Stop it short. So if you guys got any comments or questions in the comment section, here's your time to ask Nate, and then we'll call it quits at the 3 hour mark. So,
and I can't see the comments because I'm on the phone, so you would have to let me know. But since we were talking about the Revolutionary War, like I said, I've read a handful of books on it. If you're a reader, if you enjoy reading, pick up the book 1776. By David McClough, I think is how you pronounce his name. I'm not quite sure, but he's quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. That book, 1776, is so good. I'm telling you, it's a page turner. I think I read it in 3 days, and now I'm reading his book called The Pioneers. And after I read 1776, my girlfriend was like, okay, you like this book? And she went online and ordered me every single one of his books. So I have all of them now. Another really good one, if you like United States military history, Brian, I think his name is Brian Kilmeade. He has a handful of books that are really, really good. So he has Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers. He has Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, Andrew Jackson, and what's the big one that Andrew Jackson was the commander of? New Orleans. So those are some really, really phenomenal history books. I recently started reading.
You got a question there, Nate.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Before you do another hour.
What's the question?
It says, what is your biggest asset being a Marine? What would you do differently, if anything?
Okay, so biggest asset I think that I got from my experience in the Marine Corps is, of course, the friendships that we have. You know, all these friendships are all assets, of course. And for me, it was discipline. It was discipline, and it was the experience of going through something very, very challenging and being able to make it through that challenge. When we experience something, no matter how small it is, if it's really difficult, it gives us the confidence to try something else that's difficult. And then when we accomplish that, it's like, okay, why can't we do something else that's difficult? So it gave me the discipline to persevere, which perseverance is a big one, but it also gave me the confidence to try things that, had I not had the experience in the Marine Corps, I may not have had the courage to do, or I may not have thought I was capable of doing. And it all came from those deployments in Iraq, you know, going out and being in that environment, digging those fighting holes, not having a full meal every day, being covered in dirt, sleep deprived, in constant pain and misery, and making it through that and going, okay, I could do it again. And then accomplishing that and going, okay, let's see how it is to be a drill instructor. And being a drill instructor and being successful, it's given me the confidence to pursue anything that I want to pursue. There's nothing that I feel like I can't do, and I love a challenge. If I'm doing something and it's difficult, great, awesome. That's going to be more fun because it's going to make me stronger, it's going to make me better, and it's going to make me continue to push through. And another big thing that I learned about being in the Marine Corps, at least this is something that holds true for me, is when I look back on it, of course, we have the certain things that we acquire from accomplishing a task, right? We have, you get this plaque. I have my drill instructor plaque. I have my campaign cover sitting up there. I have my YouTube plaque sitting up on the wall for getting my first 100,000 subscribers. Like, these things are cool, but when I look back at my journey through the Marine Corps career, it's not the plaque that really holds weight. It's the experiences that I had. People say it all the time, and it may be cliche, but things are cliche for a reason because they're real. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So for me, I love the journey. I love pursuing new things and going through that learning experience and doing something that I suck at, and being the beginner again and learning and growing from that. So that's really some of the assets and what I've gotten from being in the Marine Corps.
All right, next question. How does it feel to live through all that mess?
It's something, I think anyone who went through it, who survived it, came back in one piece. I'm fortunate enough that I still have both arms. I have both legs. So I'm very blessed when it comes to that. So I'm thankful that I did it. I'm thankful that I went through it. I often think about, I'm sure when you're sitting by yourself and you're just pondering different thoughts, who hasn't in one moment in time thought about the possibility of time travel? We hear people, like when you're a kid, you hear adults say, oh, if I can go back in time and know then what I know now, if I could go back in time again and know what I know now before I joined the Marine Corps, I would still want to join the Marine Corps. But man, knowing how challenging it is and how difficult it is, I'd still want to do it. But sometimes when you don't know how hard something's going to be, it makes it easier to step in and do that challenge. But I really look back on my time in the Marine Corps. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, being a Marine and making that decision and signing that line and swearing that oath and stepping on those yellow footprints, that was the start of one of the best things I've ever done in my life.
All right, man. Well, I think it's a good time to wrap it up, man. One more time, can you tell everybody how they can get to your social media platforms?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, the main one that I do, just like you, is YouTube. I am on Facebook. I do have an Instagram account. I started TikTok not that long ago, but I only have like 2 videos on it. So I have, I believe, 160, somewhere around there, 160 dog training videos on my YouTube channel. It's my name, Nate Schoemer, and I have a basic obedience series, advanced obedience series, service dog series, which only has 2 episodes, so don't look for episode 3. It's not a very big series. But if you do want to train your dog, I'll tell you what, if you're watching this and you want to learn about dog training, if you send me an email, I'll send you a free copy of my dog training manual. So my email is just nateschoemer@gmail.com. And that manual that I wrote, which actually gave me a greater appreciation for reading. So I read more now than I ever have in my life because of writing my first book, which is a manual, but it just really opened up my eyes to how important it is to read. I would read, but again, not like I do now. All the mistakes that I made while I was learning to be a dog trainer, all the things I struggled through, I put all those lessons in that book. You know, and it's like it takes an hour or so to read if you're a fast reader. And it's like all the things I struggled with, they're right there. And I put in a format that's easy to understand, because if I can make it make sense in my own brain, I feel like it makes it become easier for other people. So if you send me an email, I'll send you a free PDF copy of that manual.
Awesome, man. Well, once again, it's always great catching up with you. I appreciate you coming on here. And once again, guys, thank you, Staff Sergeant Nathan Schoemer, United States Marine Corps.
Hey, the pleasure was mine, brother. And again, I appreciate you having me on your podcast.
Pleasure was
or whatever you call this, your show.
All right, guys. Semper Fidelis. That ends episode 3 of Interview with Warfighters.
Hey, Semper Fi, brother. Thanks again.
All right.